Good afternoon, everyone. Today we have Mr. Basit Jamal with us, who will talk about concept of friendship and enmity in Islam. Born in Delhi in 1983, Basit Jamal is an Islamic scholar and a social activist. He is also an Ashoka Fellow since 2017. In 2017, he founded Brotherhood of Humanity, a social action group dedicated to engaging in processes through which perceived enemies become friends. Jamal studied at Delhi Public School and then pursued media studies at Jamia Millia Islamia. You're welcome, Mr. Jamal.
Thank you, Behzad Bhai. Thank you, In Dialogue Foundation, for
Yes, so we have up to 3 hours for this session, and you can make your presentation for about 1 hour or so, and then maybe you can have the discussion.
Sure.
So over to you. Yeah.
Sure. So once again, thank you, Behzad Bhai. Thank you, In Dialogue Foundation, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to talk to the students of the dialogue course. And as you might be knowing, all the students, that I will be speaking on Islam and the tradition of dialogue in Islam. Not necessarily, I'll not be highlighting continuously that look, here is dialogue, here is dialogue, here is dialogue. I'll try to do that. More or less, this presentation of mine would be a discussion on the concept of friendship and enmity in Islam. It is one of the books I am currently writing. And when I was approached, I told Behzad Bhai that I would like to base my this presentation on that book which I am writing. So in the whole process, I will do a little back and forth. Like, for example, I'll discuss something about the concept of God. Then I might go to another topic, and then again I might discuss the concept of God. So there'll be a little back and forth. And I'll try to point out wherever, the dialogue process would come, wherever it would come, I'll try to point that out. So this today is going to be a crash course on, in a way, on the history of Islam, or what Islam is, the concept of Islam also. So let's begin with it. So friendship and enmity. Whenever we talk about friendship and enmity, dialogue features in it. In friendship, we know that that dialogue happens in friendship. And in enmity, generally it's missing. I'm not saying that, enemies may not have dialogue, but generally it's missing. And moreover, we are going to see all this in context of Islam. So in this talk today, we'll be discussing dialogue in the context of your presenter, which is me, introduction to some ideas, the God in Islam, who sows enmity, the faithful are non-Muslim enemies, what about enemies, and the conclusion. Renowned historian Michael Crichton, he said that if you don't know history, then you don't know anything. So today's presentation will be very history heavy. But first, about me, the present, which is, your presenter. I had a very good education from one of the best schools, then, one of the best colleges, did, development communication from MCRC, Mass Communication Research Center. And in my earlier part of life, let's say the school life, I was not, very, let's say I wasn't really interested in religion, Islam. I wasn't really interested. I was more interested in sports and other things. But a point came, but it wasn't that I never used to question about religion or God or, the meaning of life. But around college time, when I entered college, my interest in religion suddenly shot up. And during that time, uh, I came across certain people who were presenting religion or religious ideology in a very political way and a negative political way. So, justifying violence, justifying hatred. And there was a point that I, kind of started to get influenced by it to some degree. But the kind of education I had learned to question, to think. And in my schooling days, I used to participate in debates and discussions and various activities. So I had this thing that I have to research, I have to study myself. And some of the people I had met, when I started to study the Quran and, study the Islamic scriptures. So those who were, in a way indoctrinating me at that time, they said, you should not study. You won't understand. You can't understand it. We'll tell you what is there. And I was always like, why would not I understand? I kind of also took it as a little bit, that uh, I have a better education than you. And it's apparent. Why would I not understand? So away from them, I started to do my own studies, own critical study. And, I started to read, different point of views, and not just one school of thought, but different schools of thoughts. I started to, ponder on the Quran, read myself, ponder on it, think about it, read hadith, read the seerah. Seerah is the biography, hadith are the sayings of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So I realized slowly and steadily that the ideas that were being presented to me, I feel betrayed. That, the things they were presenting to me, they were cherry picked, they were out of context, they were not showing the complete picture. And I felt very betrayed, extremely betrayed. Because I was not someone who initially, in my schooling days, who was someone who would love to hate. And a point came that, for me, if I was like, if religion says it, then okay. If religion justifies it, then okay. If Quran says it, then okay. But, there was an inside me, I was not feeling comfortable. I was accepting it that, okay, if religion teaches it, then I'll accept it. And when I, discovered, actually, when I started to research, I was like, okay, I'll do a better job than they are doing. Those who were indoctrinating me. I'll do a better job than them. But during my research, I realized that, they were not reporting things correctly or out of context, not showing the complete picture. I'll give you a few examples today also. So I realized that, when I was heartbroken, in a way, I also felt, relieved that, religion actually does not teach all this. I discovered. And I realized that I have to help, other young people like me. I felt betrayed. I felt, they were trying to fool me. They were trying to sell their own, political vision to me. And I realized that there are other young people like me who might be going through who are going through the same process. and I need to help them. They might not be, studying. They might not have the critical thinking. And I'm not saying that, everybody is giving this same doctrine. There's a particular small group, which has no problems in taking the name of religion and saying, religion promotes hatred, or, it's fine if you're religious and you hate people. So empathizing with other young people, I started to, help them go through the same journey I was going through, and help them, get more deeply connected to the Quran, to the life of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That's what I started to do. So in brief, that's about me. That's what I've been doing since 17, 18 years now, studying, researching. So that was about me. Now, who studies religion? Who studies religion? The obvious answer is, people of faith study religion. I say, in my these 17, 18 years of, deeply thinking about religion and, observing what's going on in the religious world, I realized that, besides people of faith, there are also, politically minded hypocrites who are, reading religion, studying religion for their own, ends, political ends. Then dialogue practitioners, they also study religion, as well as those who seek to kill dialogue and set a monologue, who don't want dialogue. They also are studying religion. In fact, the second groups in all these three which you see, they, I believe, are studying religion more. Of course, they are cherry picking. They're not presenting it correctly. But, they are using religion as a very powerful tool to further their own, ideas. Then, of course, peace builders also study religion. That's what I have observed, as well as those who create conflicts. So, I've seen that the peace builders would be quoting religion, and, even those who create conflict, they would be also quoting religion. So religion is right in the center of, many of the things, most of the things that are going around in the world. Now, there's a crucial question. Is religion supposed to teach us love? Or is religion supposed to teach us hate? This is a very important question which, everybody should think about, whatever religious tradition they are from. Can the purpose of religion be to teach us hate, to teach us enmity? Can that be the goal of religion? Or would the goal of religion, should the goal of religion be to teach us friendship? This is something to, deeply think about. And, you won't have to really think deeply. A voice inside your heart would say that the purpose of religion has to be to teach us friendship and love. And it cannot be to teach us enmity and hate. So nobody needs to be a religious scholar to, arrive at this conclusion. Now, I'll go more, deeply into Islam. Up till here, it was a more general, discussion. Who is the God in Islam? Islam is always, in the media for good and bad reasons. There's a propaganda. There's Islamophobia. We know what's happening around the world. So, who is the God in Islam? We need to understand what this religion, Islam, which is always there in the news. What is this religion about? Who is the God in Islam? The word which is generally used for describing the God in Islam is Allah. Allah actually comes from two words. Al, which means the, like the specific the. And lah comes from ilah, which means God. So Allah actually means, if you want to translate it in English, it means the God. Al, the, and lah, God. The God. Now, who is the God? There's this verse in the Quran, chapter 22, verse 40, which says that the name of Allah, the God, is invoked in monasteries, churches, synagogues, and mosques. Now, uh, a believer in the Quran, a believer in Islam, if he goes to a church, he does not hear the word Allah. If he goes to a synagogue, he does not hear the word Allah, or in a monastery, it's only in the mosque that you hear the word Allah. So, Allah is not, when the Quran is saying Allah, it's not referring to a personal God of only one community. And it is not talking in the sense of keeping the name or keeping the concept of God only, confined to Arabic. If you go in a church, you don't find Allah, but the Quran says that in the church, Allah's name is being taken. So Allah is, more, if in Arabic you want to say the God, you have no other option. You have no other option but to say Allah. So Allah is not a personal, God of just one race, but it is, the Quran says it's the God about whom everyone is talking. In this particular verse, chapter 22, verse 40, the Quran is saying that Allah is a God about whom everyone is talking, not necessarily using the word Allah. Whatever, whenever they are talking about the creator of the universe, they are talking about, the same God. Maybe they are using different words, but Quran claims they're all talking about the one being. So to further, go into it about languages, because certain times, people say you cannot call upon Allah by any other name. In our times, we find such people. You cannot use any other language. Though the first verse is contradicting it, you can say we don't prefer. That's more, or we prefer to say it in Arabic. That's more acceptable. But to say you cannot is, contradicting the Quran. And, Quran says in chapter 22, verse 40, oh, I've given the wrong reference over here, sorry. In this particular first one, I just realized I've given the wrong reference. Anyways, there's a verse in the Quran which says, and of his signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth. Heavens and the earth, heaven does not mean paradise, it means sky. In our general use, we at times refer to paradise as heaven. But heaven, wherever it comes, generally, it means the sky, the universe. And of his signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth, which is the universe. And the diversity of your languages and your colors, your skin colors. Somebody is white, somebody is black, somebody is brown. Indeed, in that are signs for those of knowledge. So God or Allah is the creator of all the languages. The creator of the universe is the creator of all the languages. This is what the Quran claims. And thus, in every language, he has given, a name for himself. And on the basis of it, the Quran says in chapter 22, verse 40, that in the monasteries, in the church, in the synagogue, everywhere, there's the discussion about the creator of the universe, who's in Arabic called Allah. At another place in the Quran, chapter 55, verse 4, Quran says that Ar-Rahman, that's another name of Allah, and I'll come shortly to it. Ar-Rahman, another name of Allah, who taught the Quran. He created man and has taught him articulate speech. So this verse is not just talking about the Arabs. Quran claims that, wherever there is mankind and they know how to speak, whatever language, It is Ar-Rahman, which is another name of Allah, who actually has taught them how to speak. So if he has taught them, he has taught them to, also know his name. So that was about his name, Allah, not being a specific Arab god or, a god of a particular tribe. But when we say Allah, it refers to, the creator of everything there is. In chapter 55, again, I've given a wrong reference, sorry. Excuse me, this one is from chapter 17. Say, call upon Allah or call upon Ar-Rahman. Whichever name you call, to him belong the best names. So whether you call him Allah or you call him Ar-Rahman, to him belong the best names. So all this I'm emphasizing just to show that, just to highlight that Allah is not a personal God, but the concept of God in Quran is a universal God, God of all the skin colors, God of all the languages. So basically God of all the different cultures. That's the God Islam is talking about. Now, why the question comes, why did God create us? Quran has to answer it. If Quran is talking about a God, a creator, Allah, then it has to answer why God has created us. And as I said, I'll do a little back and forth. I'll again come to this question in another topic or the next chapter. Right now, I'll focus on enmity and friendship. So chapter 49, verse 13, it says, O mankind, we created you from a single pair of a male and a female. That, we all human beings are children of one pair of male and female. And made you into nations and tribes. Nations and tribes, somebody is a Chinese, somebody is an African, somebody is from this tribe and somebody is from that tribe. Skin colors are different, features are different, and made you into nations and tribes that you may know each other. The purpose of us dividing us, into these different, nations and tribes is that we may know each other. And this particular translation I've taken from Abdullah Yusuf Ali. So in the brackets he puts, not that you might hate each other, not that you might despise each other. There's a lot of, negative nationalism. Quran recognizes nationalism, but there's a lot of negative nationalism also going, where there's a division, hatred, all these things have happened throughout history. One nation considers itself to be, greater and above other communities or other nations. This has gone forever. And one tribe, like in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, one particular tribe would say, oh, I'm better than you, and the other tribe would say, no, we are better than you. So there was a lot of hatred and negative competition between nations and tribes. Like the Romans and Persians, if we take, they are again nations, which they were big powers at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So Quran says that the reason Allah has divided us into these nations, the purpose is so that we may know each other. The purpose is not that we do all this, that we start hating each other, we start making supremacist attitudes. Oh, we are we go into our history and say, oh, we are so great, and we find stupid excuses to be full of pride. So Quran says, the reason is that we may know each other, not that we might hate. Verily, the most honored of you in the sight of Allah is He who is the most righteous of you. The verse is still longer. I've just quoted a portion of it. So we realize, that according to the Quran, Allah has not created us for the purpose of enmity. He has created us for the purpose of being friends, knowing each other. Friends know each other. So in that sense, so that you may know each other, you might be friends, not that you might be enemies. And, in the farewell sermon of the Prophet ﷺ, he emphasizes this: no white is greater than black. No Arab is greater than a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab greater than an Arab. If he was somebody who had a supremacist attitude that, my nation is greater, I am an Arab, he would have said, we are Arabs and we are greater than the rest of the communities. But he didn't say that. In his last message, which is called the farewell sermon, in which he asks his companions, have I delivered the message of God to you? In that particular message, he says, no white is greater than a black, nor a black greater than a white. An Arab is not greater than a non-Arab, and a non-Arab is not greater than an Arab. The only thing that makes one, puts one above another, is God consciousness, that you're conscious about who your God is. And we'll come to that aspect also, now. So, to go more into what kind of a God was, Islam talking about. Up till now, if we observe, we are talking about so that you might know each other. Not that you might hate each other. And, if you observe, sorry, I keep forgetting because dialogue is not really my subject. I'm trying to, connect the two. So please excuse me if I forgot that it's a dialogue class I'm taking. So, so that you may know each other, if I go back to the previous verse, this happens, this is an invitation to dialogue, to know each other, talk to each other, to know each other's languages, to know each other's cultures, to know each other's societies. This chapter 22, verse 40, it is again talking about, different communities holding dialogue about who God is. Maybe their languages are different. The words they use to refer to God, they are different. But, it is a verse which is encouraging dialogue. Pointing at this verse, somebody can say, okay, maybe it's not directly saying about dialogue, but, looking at it, somebody can realize that, anybody can realize that it is not against dialogue. In fact, the idea that is there in the verse, it will only promote dialogue. So, God being the creator of languages, God being the creator of, different skin colors, God being the creator of, who teaches you how to speak. He has created all mankind. One God created all mankind. So all this, is calling upon standing up for, silently maybe, in a very subtle way, silently, but standing up for dialogue. That, meet, talk to others, exchange ideas. So coming back to, who God is. And I'm going into all this because, when we come to enmity and friendship, the concepts of those two concepts, we need to know all this in the background. When I generally meet Muslims and I ask them, who's God? They generally say, Allah is, they tell a particular chapter, Qul huwallahu ahad, Surah Ikhlas, that, Allah is one, He is unborn, He did not give birth, He's self-sufficient, there's nothing like Him. But they often miss, that's my experience. Most of the times, they miss Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. That Allah is Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. This is the introduction of Allah in the Quran. And if you open the Quran, which is the central core book of Islam, and open it, in the very first sentence is the introduction of Allah. Who is God? And in that introduction, the oneness of God is not highlighted, but rather him being Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. You might have heard Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I'm sure even those who are not Muslims, they might have heard this formula, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So it means Bismillah, in the name of the God. And Ar-Rahman actually means intensely loving, caring, and merciful. And Ar-Rahim means continuously loving, caring, and merciful. Arabic is a very powerful language, and single words could actually, if you want to translate even single words, you at times write a paragraph. So you will not generally find this translation in most of the Quran, or at most of the places, because it becomes a paragraph. In the name of the God, the intensely loving, caring, and merciful, the continuously loving, caring, and merciful. So people make it simple. So you might find in the name of God, or in the name of Allah, who's most gracious, most merciful, they shorten it, they make it simple. But this is the actual translation of Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rahim, I'm not going into the details of the word and the roots, but Rahim, to be brief, mother's womb in Quran, in Arabic, it's called Rahim. The womb of the mother is called Rahim. So it is as if pointing out that if you want to understand what does Rahim mean, look at your mother. So mother is loving, mother is caring, and a mother is merciful. And in the Islamic tradition, Allah is 100 times more loving, caring, and merciful than a mother. And Ar-Rahman denotes intensity denotes of a person of faith, he knows, the concept of God brings with it that you serve God. Now, the faithful man knows that the servant of a cruel king, of a tyrant, has to be tyrant. The servant of Hitler, let's say, he had to be cruel. He can't say, oh, I'm the servant of Hitler, but I'll care for you, and I'll be kind to you, and I'll be gentle to you. He won't be doing that. If somebody does a job under somebody who makes perfume, he's going to make perfume. If somebody does a job under somebody who makes sugar, he'll be making sugar. If somebody does a job in the factory of Maruti, what will he be doing? He'll be making cars. So this sets the relationship of somebody who believes in the Quran with the Creator. The one who understands, who truly understands it. People have generally turned religion into just a ritual. Just make the sound, just do it. You don't need to understand, you don't need to connect to it. That's where the people have brought religion. But somebody who really understands and connects, he understands what it means. That if I believe that God, the Creator, or Allah, is intensely loving, caring, and merciful, that's the industry I have to join. So I must also be intensely loving, caring, and merciful. If I'm saying my God is continuously loving, caring, and merciful, then I also must be continuously loving, caring, and merciful. The servant of the tyrant has to be tyrant, and the servant of the king of love has to love. And this whole discussion, I forgot to mention in the beginning, has a, I personally lean towards tasawwuf, the Sufi outlook of Islam. And these are the things, we very deeply focus on. That, let's first learn the first lesson. Let's not skip the first lesson. Let's first stop and learn the first lesson and then go to the second lesson. So Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim is a very important lesson. Those who know the Quran, they know that before each chapter except one, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim is there, as if reminding that, first learn this, first remember who Allah is. Wherever Allah comes, in the chapter ahead, put Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim over there. And that's when you begin to understand the Quran. So, the Bismillah Rahman Rahim really, sets our relationship with our Creator. And, somebody who has marfat is, recognition or realization, and not bookish knowledge, but, realization of Allah. He rises up saying, that, saying to God, you, O loving, caring, and merciful one, you are the master. You are my master. Give me the strength to be your dedicated servant. So, the servant does the work of the master. And who's the master? The loving, caring, and merciful one. So, love, care, and mercy begins or sets the boundary of whatever, happens in Islam. I'm not talking about how some people interpret Islam. I'm talking about what really there is. So this Bismillah Rahman Rahim sets the stage. It is, if you're connected to the electric plug, then your laptop will be charged, then your mobile phone will be charged. And if you're not connected to the plug, then your equipment will not work. So Bismillah Rahman Rahim is, the connection. And I'll come later on, I'll focus more, like I said, we'll be a little back and forth. I'll again come to how Bismillah Rahman Rahim is a connection. So in Islam, we focus a lot on Tawheed. Tawheed means monotheism or oneness, indivisibleness of, the Creator, Allah. So this formula, which is up there, La ilaha illallah, many people might have heard this also, even those who are not Muslims. Of course, Muslims know this, the importance of this. But, the one who's really in connection with Bismillah Rahman Rahim, like I said, you need to be connected to the power source. So in Islam, the tongue might say La ilaha illallah, but the heart says La ilaha illa huwa ar-Rahmanur Rahim. This portion is same as La ilaha illa. This portion, it's in Arabic, sorry, excuse me, but La ilaha illa, this portion and this portion is same. Over here it says Allah. And over here, the other portion says, Huwa Rahmanur Rahim, chapter 2, verse 163. So, who is Allah? He is Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. So, one of the things, one of the big debates or discussions or dialogue that happened at the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was, who is Allah? And the Prophet ﷺ used to emphasize that he's Ar-Rahman. In the last session that you had, I watched the video Behzad Bhai shared. At one point, he emphasized that in different cultures or different traditions, same utterances, same words could have different, meanings to the listener or to the speaker. He gave one example of the long march. So, he gave the example of the Maoist, that in China, if somebody talks of the long march, they think about Mao and the Maoist, march. Whereas, in US, in Utah, they would be reminded of the March of the Mormons. So, same letter or same words, but different meanings. So at the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the people in Arabia were using the word Allah. And the dialogue started about Allah is Ar-Rahman or not. This is the ultimate dialogue, discussion that happened in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. But most of the people, many speakers, they don't recognize it. Those who speak on Islam also, they don't recognize it or emphasize this enough. But there are many examples. There are verses in the Quran that they say, who's Ar-Rahman? If you look at the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, many of you will not know, but I'm just referring. There was a treaty that the Prophet ﷺ did with his enemies, a peace treaty. And where he wrote, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, that Allah who's Ar-Rahman. And the Makkans said, who's this Ar-Rahman? We don't recognize Ar-Rahman. So, the whole, okay, if not the whole, a big debate about Allah. Who is Allah? The Makkans said, he has partners, and the Prophet said he is Ar-Rahman and he has no partners, which is there in this verse, chapter 20, verse 5. Ar-Rahmanu alil arshi istawa. Ar-Rahman is established on the throne. So the big dialogue or discussion or debate that Islam, ignited in Makkah, when the Prophet ﷺ, delivered the message, or the Quran ignited, was that Allah is Ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman means intensely loving, caring, and merciful. And he's the only one in authority. He's the only one in authority. Without any partners, he's the only one on the throne. Throne represents authority. There is no sharer on his throne. So be dedicated to him. Tawheed means single-minded devotion. Single-minded devotion. That, you are devoted only to one. Your devotion is not divided with anyone else. So Islam was saying, be dedicated to, be devoted to the God who's intensely loving, caring, and merciful. And this is what was the problem with the people of Makkah. There were people who accepted Allah, but each, the society the Prophet ﷺ was born in, each tribe, was like, we are superior than you because our God is superior than you. If he come to fight you, our God is more powerful than your God, and he'll show you a lesson, he'll teach you a lesson. And he was born in such a society. These people, they would even kill a newborn baby, female child. And the Prophet saw that, they on one hand are so religious, and on the other hand, they are doing these things. So, he found it to be very hypocritical, their understanding of God, that, you are so religious, you believe in God, and your God, and in your understanding of God, God doesn't stop you from doing such things. Then, what God is this? God has to be the loving, caring, and merciful one. This is the dialogue. This is the discussion, the Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam or the Quran, started in Arabia. And the Makkans were like, we are never going to accept Ar-Rahman. They used to use the same word, Allah. In Surah Hudaybiyah also, they said, we won't strike out Ar-Rahman. Say in the name of Allah, just that. We are not going to put Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. So, Islam or the Prophet ﷺ was teaching, he started to teach that be single-minded, show single-minded devotion to the God who's intensely loving, caring, and merciful. Let this be, the guiding principle, the principle which guides each and every action of your life. That, this remembrance that, I am, a servant of or a creature of the God who's intensely loving, caring, and merciful. And this would, dictate each and every step or each and every action of a believer's life. This is what This is the dialogue that started, and these Makkan people, they were not willing for this, because they would have to stop their their tribal wars, and they would fight for 70 years non-stop. Their wars would never even come to an end. So they were not willing to accept this concept of God. And the dialogue or the discussion on this God started. Now, who sows enmity? We have seen that the God who is loving, caring, and merciful, cannot be teaching enmity. The God who introduces himself as Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, the God who is intensely and continuously loving, caring, and merciful, he can't be teaching enmity and hatred. So according to Islam, from where does enmity and hatred come? Where does, let's say, dialogue stop? Because in friendship there is dialogue. When there is love, there is dialogue. When there is love, there is you say, okay, let's agree to disagree. And when there is no love, there is no care, there is no mercy for each other, the value of let's agree to disagree also goes away. So from where hatred, enmity, envy, from where does all these things come? In the Quranic view, in the Islamic view, it comes from shaitan or Satan or devil, howsoever, the shaitan. Let's put it shaitan for our discussion. So in the Quranic, I'm not going into each and every verse to point out, who shaitan is and what he does. Shaitan is someone who's racist. He's racist. He according to the Quran, he is the one, who indulged in the first case of racism. He's a supremacist. I'm not going into the details. Those who know Islam in more detail, they'll know what exactly I'm saying. But for others, just accept it. I'm not going into details of this. He's a hater. He's haughty. He's arrogant. He's envious. He desires destruction for others. He's a rebel against the loving, caring, and merciful God, Allah. He desires humans to be cut off from the servantship of Allah. They should not be serving this God of love, care, and mercy. They should serve me. They should worship me. And worship is not simply that you say, oh, I'm worshiping. Your acts tell whom you are worshiping. He plots to make humans walk in his footsteps. And his footsteps I mentioned above. He's a racist, he's a supremacist, he's a hater, he's a proud, arrogant, envious, he desires destruction, and he stands against love, care, and mercy. That's what Shaitan stands against. And he wants human beings to walk in his footsteps. And the Quran mentions the God of love, care, and mercy. Follow him. Don't follow Shaitan. Worship Allah. Don't worship Shaitan. And many times, people read the Quran, I find in my own community, and, they are not understanding, why does Quran says, don't worship Shaitan, worship Allah. Because they're not understanding who's Shaitan or who's Allah. So when any of these things comes, racism, supremacist behaviors, hate, arrogance, pride, desiring destruction for others, there are no dialogue. So we can say in the Islamic, view, Shaitan is against dialogue. Now, Shaitan is not, who is Shaitan? To further go into a little bit, Shaitan is a title. Shaitan is not a particular being per se. Generally, it is referred to a particular being. But Quran is very clear that Shaitan is a title which can be with a spirit or which can be with a human being. Like, chapter 114, verse 6, which is there on screen. It says, from among spirits and mankind. That Shaitan is there in spirits, in the spirit world, and in the mankind, even a human being. Even I, you, or somebody else, may our Creator protect us. We can be Shaitan. So Shaitan is a title. Quran says that division, discord, hate, conflict, between us human beings, between you and me, between black and white, between one group of people and the other group of people, between Russians and Americans, between, Jews and Muslims, or, between Hindus and Muslims, according to the Quranic view. Wherever there is hate, there is conflict, there is enmity, it is shaitan that is causing it. And shaitan is not necessarily, a spirit. As I said, it could be a human being. A man can very well earn the title of, shaitan. So to go into, shaitan and enmity and all, till now I've not quoted verses, but here are a few examples that what does shaitan do. Chapter 17, verse 53, it says, and tell my servants to say that which is best. Indeed, shaitan, Satan, induces conflict among them. Indeed, Satan is ever to mankind a clear enemy. Shaitan is a clear enemy. Quran is saying, to the whole mankind. Quran is not saying to the Muslims, to the whole mankind, shaitan is an enemy. To all the children of Adam. Like he said, God created us from one. Islam says, we are from one, a pair of male and female, from one set of parents. And shaitan is against mankind. He's an enemy. Another verse, chapter 12, verse 5, it says, he said, oh my son, it's from a story. Oh my son, do not relate your vision to your brothers, or they will contrive against you a plan. They'll conspire against you. Indeed, shaitan to man is a manifest enemy. It's a clear enemy. So Quran is again and again at many places emphasizes that, oh, human beings, oh, children of Adam, your enemy is shaitan. Your enemy is not another child of Adam. He is your family. He is your brother. She is your sister. You are one family of one parents. Both his and your enemy is shaitan. And shaitan brings division. Shaitan brings, differences, hate and enmity between you all. If you find there is, enmity or hatred between you and someone else, it is because of, shaitan. Could be a shaitan human or could be a shaitan spirit. So, to further, draw the point home, in chapter 12, verse 100, the work of God and the work of shaitan is pitched, as opposites. So, this chapter 12, verse 5, oh my son, your brothers will conspire a plan against you. Shaitan is an enemy. So, shaitan influenced his brothers. I'm not going to the details of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. And, his brothers, did a lot of injustice to him. And there was a division between them. But in the end, that was verse 5 and this is verse 100. Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam says in the end that he, that is God, Allah, was indeed good to me when he took me out of prison and brought you all here, out of the desert. Even after shaitan had sown enmity between me and my brothers. So in the end, his brothers, he does good to his brothers in the end. And, even though he could have punished his brothers, I'm not going into the detail of the story. He became much more powerful. His brothers tried to kill him, took his family, took his, parents, took his home, deprived him of his freedom, betrayed him, betray his trust. And in the end, he still, returned his brothers' evil with good. And in the end, they united. And he does not take the credit himself. He says, it is Allah, the God who's loving, caring, and merciful, who has brought us together. After shaitan had brought division. So again, when now they are united, there would be dialogue. There would be discussion. But when, there's division, they are away. There's no dialogue. When they are beating, they're trying to kill their brother Yusuf, they're not having a dialogue with him. They're throwing him in, they're throwing Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam in the well. There's no dialogue. And that's what shaitan wants. Bring enmity, bring hatred, bring bloodshed, bring corruption on the earth. And Allah and his servants, they end enmity, they end hatred, they forgive, they turn enemies into friends, they undo all that shaitan does. So coming to who are the faithful, even though I've discussed a little bit, as I said, there'll be a little back and forth. So who are the faithful? First and foremost, the prophets are the faithful. We say, the companions of the prophets, they are the faithful. Those who came after them are the faithful. The saints, the awliya Allah, they are the faithful. And then, anybody who, there's this, let's say degrees based on God consciousness, nothing else. So these in brief, they are, the faithful. If we do a recap of what we have covered up till now, we'll realize that the faithful, the main quests of the faithful in his life, of course, there are more than this, but right now, till what we have discussed up till this point, we can, see three main things. First is that we humans are one family. The believer, the faithful, always remembers it. His quest is not to forget this. The teaching of the Quran. The faithful, Quran says, don't forget what we are teaching. Don't forget. So the faithful's quest is to always remember that we all are one family. We all human beings are one family. At times, people of faith also, they get divided into different sects, this sect and that sect. And when I go and give talks to different places, I emphasize on this. I'm very strongly against, any kind of division. I say, you remember, Shia, Sunni, Deobandi, Barelvi, Ahle Hadith, Salafi, Wahhabi, whatnot. You remember all this. You remember Jews and Christians and Muslims. You remember all the groups. The one group you forget is that we all are children of, one parents. That is the only group that you want to forget. You remember so many groups. But, it's not in your quest to remember. In your quest, it is to remember, I'm of, this sect. I'm a Deobandi, I'm a Barelvi, I'm a Ahle Hadith, I'm this, I'm that. You're in your quest are these, I have to remember the names of these groups. And the group which the Quran emphasizes, that you don't even, at times remember. It's not in your quest list that I have to always remember that, we are one family also. So I say, this is the only group that you wanted to forget. You chose to forget. You don't want to remember. The second quest is, we have to be beware of our enemy. And I'm, first, second, third, I'm not saying it in a particular order of importance. I'm just saying 1, 2, 3, how it is on the PPT. So, the second quest is, beware of the enemy. So Quran says, do not follow footsteps of shaitan. So, one has to understand who's shaitan. He's the enemy. He causes hate. He causes conflict. He brings division between brothers, like we just saw between Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam and his brothers. He brings division between children of Adam alayhi salam, like he brought division between children of Yaqub alayhi salam, Bani Israel and Bani Adam. So Bani Israel is, Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam and his brothers, and Bani Adam is, we all. And in their story, Quran is highlighting that this is what he did to Bani Israel and this is what he's doing to you. And your role is to, end division and bring together if you are the servants of Ar-Rahman, the God of love. The third quest, so the second quest is not to follow in his footsteps. The third quest is follow the friend. Who's the friend? There's a very beautiful verse, one of the most beautiful verses to me in the Quran, chapter 28, verse 77, which says, do good to others as God has done good to you. Which is, which can be, summarized to say, behave as Allah behaves with you. And how Allah behaves with us, I'll later on, come a little bit more in detail on that. Like I said, there'll be a little back and forth. So one of the most important, mission in the believer's life, in the faithful's life, is tazkiyah. Tazkiyah means, purifying yourself. Chapter 91, verse 9. Actually, chapter 91, Surah Shams, that's the chapter where, in the Quran, Allah takes maximum number of oaths and says, the one who purifies himself will be successful, and the one who corrupts himself, will fail. So the whole mission of tazkiyah is to achieve the state we were born in. We were not born. What is the state we were born in? What does it mean? We were born dedicated to one God of love, care, and mercy. And the proof of it is that, this is how Islam sees it. I'm not saying, that others may consider it as a proof, but as a faithful, I'm speaking on Islam. For me, the proof of it is that, let's say, I say for myself, for me, the proof of it is that, the stamp that, we all are born with the stamp that we are dedicated to one God of love, care, and mercy. The stamp, the proof of it for me is that, I was not born hating anyone. I was not born knowing that somebody is my enemy. I was willing to love. When I opened my eyes and whoever was around me, I was willing to love that person. That's what, I was born with. I was born to forgive. How children, I have two sons and, they are quite young. I see, if I scold them or if, they are angry, we slightly, pat them, or even if they fight, in just a few seconds, they'll forgive and they'll be back in your lap. That's our true self. And when we grow up and, our parents, even if, they show an opinion which does not match ours, we get angry on them and, we hold a grudge at times even against our parents. This is not how we were born. This is not the state we were born in. So tazkiyah is to return to the state we were born in, not hating, not knowing what is enmity, full of forgiveness, full of love, willing to love. That's the state we were born in. And Quran says anybody who succeeds in purifying himself, he is victorious, he is successful. So in tasawwuf, in Sufism, let's say, in the Sufi thought, tasawwuf, maybe not everybody knows tasawwuf, the word tasawwuf. In the Sufi thought, anybody, somebody who dies without hate, without enmity, his inner state is giving witness that I'm only dedicated to the God of love, care, and mercy. He's perfectly in Tawheed, perfectly in a monotheism. Monotheism is not about, just an utterance on your tongue. It covers, it colors you completely, your every thought. Somebody who dies in that state of perfect monotheism, perfect Tawheed, in the state he was born in, that person can say, oh God, I return to you victorious. I have not been defeated by shaitan. I am not returning to you in a corrupt state. I return to you as you created me. I return to you in the same state. I return to you in, in Tawheed. So, this is the state Islam seeks to put, the faithful into. That, you have to try to achieve this state. We have discussed about shaitan before, but, again, I said there will be a lot of back and forth. So, Quran, in chapter 5, verse 91, emphasizes that shaitan's plan is but to excite enmity and hatred between you with intoxicants and gambling and hinder you from the remembrance of Allah and from prayer. Will you not then abstain? So if we observe in this verse, the ideology of Islam, and this is how, the Sufis look at it, others, not necessarily everyone looks at Islam like this, but this is how the true Sufis have looked at. In Sufism also, there are a lot of, debates and problems. I'm not going into all that. This is not the topic. There are many issues, in every group. Let's put it like that. I'm just talking about plain ideology, or, that in true sense, what tasawwuf represents. This is how they look at it. So shaitans, like we talked about, returning to the state you were born in, returning to God in that state. And shaitan wants to corrupt us. And that's what Quran is saying. Shaitan's plan. Shaitan's plan. What is the shaitan's plan? Shaitan's tool is intoxicants and gambling. These are the tool. According to Islam, alcohol is banned. Why is alcohol banned? When I go to talk to Muslims, in mosques, in madrasas and other places, I ask, why is alcohol banned? And rarely, I can't even say rarely, never even once, has somebody given me the perfect answer. Everybody says, it affects your mind, alcohol is haram because it affects your mind, it affects your thinking. And whereas the reason Quran says alcohol is haram is hate and enmity, not, your mind, your mind, something happens to your mind. Because shaitan uses it as a tool to sow enmity and hatred between you. That's why alcohol is haram. In Islam, anything that, could be attached to hate and enmity is haram. The funny part is, sometimes I find it funny, sometimes I find it hypocritical, sometimes I find it extremely sad that, those who hate people who take alcohol, who abuse them, who curse them, you alcoholic, and they would really be full of hate for them. They might not drink alcohol, but they are drinking hatred, they are drinking enmity. So what's the point? You're missing the maqsad. You're missing the maqsad. Alcohol was banned because it leads you to hatred and enmity. So you ban the alcohol, but you don't ban hatred and enmity. This is hypocrisy. This is how you are being insincere to the Quran of your own book. You hate alcohol. You won't drink alcohol in a Muslim, locality. You will not find a single, shop selling alcohol. But there would be people, I'm not saying everybody, majority are, are not, peddlers of hate. They might be, people might get influenced, but, they are not peddlers of hate. But you will find peddlers of hatred and enmity, but you will not find a peddler of alcohol in the Muslim locality. This is weird. In the Sufi thought, this is ultimate hypocrisy. That, you are not drunk on alcohol, but you are drunk on enmity and hatred. So, in the end, you are worse. You are worse than an alcoholic. That you're drunk on enmity and hatred against someone else. So the plan of shaitan, according to Islam, is to, bring hatred, bring enmity. These things, they, divide people. They put them away. They bring a wall between them. It stops, healthy relationships between people. It stops, dialogue, discussion, communication between people. And, it gives birth to stereotyping, biases, prejudices, such things. Kills critical thinking, all these things, make, feel insecure of another group, and all this starts, flow. And if you observe more carefully, intoxicants and gambling are tools. The goal is hatred and enmity, to make you impure, to, shift you from the state you were born in. You are not born with hatred and enmity. To shift your state to a hatred and enmity, shaitan is using intoxicants and gambling, and stop you from remembrance of Allah. We'll come to remembrance of Allah and prayer. Will you not then abstain? So we recognize that remembrance of Allah and prayer, keeps you pure. It undoes the plan of shaitan. So we'll go a little bit more into this. Remembrance of Allah. What is remembrance of Allah? Because this verse says shaitan stops you from remembrance of Allah and from prayers. So what is remembrance of Allah? Like I said, who is Allah? The introduction is Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. This is how we introduce ourselves. Like, for example, if somebody goes somewhere, he might say, I am, Abdullah, and I'm an engineer. I might say, I'm Basit, and I'm, a social activist. Somebody might say, I am Ruxana, and I am a student, right? So the name and the work. And Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is really like that. The name Bismillah and the work, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, intensely loving, caring, merciful, continuously loving, caring, merciful. So Shaitan wants you to, be cut off from who Allah is. That's what this verse says. And when you remember who Allah is, what do you remember? That He's Ar-Rahman. He's loving, caring, and merciful. So chapter 43, verse 36 of the Quran says that there's a mic which is not mute. I'm getting some background noise. Can you please mute your mic? I'm sorry, it's more, only I'm the one who's speaking, but I'll soon give you, we can have a lot of discussion, but I apologize, it's more of just me speaking right now. So, remembrance of Ar-Rahman, that, Quran says that anybody who remembers that God is loving, caring, merciful, somebody who forgets that Allah is loving, caring, and merciful, Shaitan attaches to him. And when Shaitan attaches, he walks the path of violence, division, superiority complex. And, these photos, they represent this. Pyramids were built by, enslaving a whole nation by pharaohs. Pharaohs were so cruel. Wars were fought. Colonization happened. Why? We are superior, white man's burden and whatnot. Hitler, this photo is from Hitler. What kind of ideology did Hitler have? These are not people who recognize that their God, their master, their creator is the loving God. If they recognized, they would not have walked this path. They would not have walked. And this is what the Quran says. Somebody who forgets that their creator is Ar-Rahman, the loving, caring, and merciful one, Shaitan takes over them. Shaitan takes over them. So, these rulers, somebody might call Alexander the Great, but for me, he's Alexander the idiot. What did he achieve? People might, those people who are fond of war, they might find him great. Not for me. Not for, people who stand for, not for, people who stand against, mindless bloodshed and, fighting. What did he achieve finally? What was the point? Crazy. So the other thing was, in this verse we saw, stops you from the remembrance of Allah and prayer, worship. So we saw remembrance of Ar-Rahman and worship. What does worship do? Why did God create us? If you generally ask somebody in a Muslim community, why did God create us? So they'll say, God created us so that we might worship Him, which is the first verse. It's not chapter 5, it's chapter 56, verse 51. Over here, it's wrong. Chapter 56, verse 51. I apologize again for the wrong reference. The chapter number is 56. So, Quran says Allah created us for worship. And this is where most of the people stop. They don't, think, what was the purpose of worship? The answer is there. In chapter 2, verse 21, Quran says, "O mankind, worship your Lord who created you and those before you so that you may become muttaqi." Muttaqi means somebody who has taqwa. Taqwa means God consciousness. So we are created for worship, according in the Islamic vision. The purpose of my creation in the Islamic view, your creation, our creation, is that we are created to worship our Creator. What is the point of worship? The point of worship, at another place, Quran says that it is that you may have taqwa, God consciousness. So somebody might question, what will happen if we have God consciousness? That answer is also there in chapter 5, verse 2. It's a long verse, I'm just quoting from the middle. Do not let hatred of a people who once barred you from the sacred mosque provoke you to transgress. Cooperate with one another in goodness and taqwa. Taqwa is chapter 2, verse 21. So, this verse is saying, do not let hatred guide your actions, dictate your actions. in the Islamic view, the religion of the God who introduces himself as loving, caring, and merciful, he has to continuously strike hatred, has to continuously speak against hatred. And that's what we find. If somebody sincerely, looks at the Quran, that's what he will find. Like in this verse, our purpose of creation stops, that we don't let hatred. Basically, we can say, if we combine all the three, that God has not created us for hatred. God has created us for love, because he's the God of love. So why would he, the God of Ar-Rahim, love, care, and mercy, create us for hatred and enmity? He would create us so that we may know each other, like that chapter 49 verse 13 says. And for knowing, we have to have love, care, and mercy. So do not let hatred dictate your actions. This is where the worship also takes. In the Islamic view, the worship puts you at a point where you are not guided by hatred, because hatred is in the plan of Shaitan. That's what we saw in the earlier verse, chapter 5, verse 19, that his plan is to sow hatred and enmity. And the point of worship ends that you don't let hatred, color you. You don't let hatred dictate your actions. Even if you get hatred in your heart, you don't let it, color you. You don't let it, take control of your thinking or your actions. So have taqwa. So we see worship also in Islam, in the Islamic view, is taking you away from, hatred. But, in the current impression that we have, and sadly, many times, some Muslims also have. I'm not saying not every Muslim. Again, I'm not a stereotype, and I know the reality that not all Muslims don't think like this. But there are some, who think all non-Muslims, they are enemies. There are some. Of course, the radical on the other side, they'll say that they are the real picture. All Muslims are like this. This is the sign also of the extremists. They'll always stereotype everyone of the other group. They are all like this. They'll paint everyone with the same brush. But this is an important question. What is, in the Islamic view, are non-Muslim enemies? The Islamic perspective is best represented by Prophet Muhammad ﷺ himself. So, who is the Prophet? Taught that before any person can be classified into different faiths or different brackets, they have to be classified as children of Adam alayhi salam, of one parents. Whom, and between those children, Shaitan is trying to create divisions. This is the starting point in the vision of Islam. So this is something which really promotes, that we are one family. So there should always be dialogue. If there's a problem in the family, there must be dialogue. You can't sit in different rooms. If you are a member of the family and, two family members, they go and sit in different rooms and they're not willing to talk to each other, as a responsible family member, your duty is to bring them together to the table. Why don't you sit and talk it out? Why don't you, try to, have a dialogue? So, in the Islamic view, the vision, starts with positive assumption, not negative assumption about people. We can say, Prophet Muhammad, of course, he's the perfect follower of Islam. From his childhood, we consider him to be Muslim. We believe that he's a Muslim from his very childhood. And for 40 years, he got his prophetic mission at 40 years, when he was 40 years old. But in those early 40s, where he was still a Muslim, he was a Muslim. He earned the titles of Al-Amin and As-Sadiq by the non-Muslims, not by Muslims, by non-Muslims. The non-Muslims used to call him Al-Amin and As-Sadiq. The Al-Amin means the trustworthy and the honest, and As-Sadiq means the righteous, the truthful. So he was living a life, where the non-Muslims were, uh, they would go to him, they would discuss with him, they would seek advice from him, even though they are not from the same faith from the very beginning. He was born in that society, but he never, accepted. He always was like, I follow one Allah who is the God of love. He was never away from this faith. That God is, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. He was never away from this faith. He was always dedicated. Tawheed means single-minded dedication to this God of love. And still, he was meeting with the non-Muslims, discussing with them, and to the point, that those very people used to call him the trustworthy, the faithful, the honest. So Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in his prophetic mission was 23 years long. He achieved his prophetic mission at 40 years, and he passed away at 63 years. So his prophetic mission was 23 years. And there are innumerable examples of him being friends with non-Muslims. A lengthy book can be just written on this aspect. So to briefly cover his whole life, I would say that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was preaching that one should be, dedicated to the God of love, care and mercy, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, whose sun shines on everyone. The very first chapter of the Quran, chapter 1, verse 2, it starts like this: Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So, Rabbul Alameen, the Lord, the sustainer, Lord of everyone, not just Muslims, everyone, the Hindus, the Christians, the Jews, the blacks, the whites, the Indian, the Russian, the American. So, it's a universal God, the God of everyone, the God of universe. We find that, Quran at so many places highlights that Rabbul Alameen is someone, his sign is his sun is a sign. Sun is an ayat. If you look, it shines on you as well as your enemy. If you say, oh, that guy is my enemy, just stop and meditate that the sun shines on me as well as him. The rain, when this time rain was happening, I was meditating, that it's falling on me as well as, my neighbor who's not of my faith. So who's my God? He's Rabbul Alameen. He's, not just mine, not just mine, not anyone else's. He's not, he's for everyone. The rain falls on the Muslim field as well as the non-Muslim field. So, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was, trying to, ignite a dialogue around this in Arabia, that he's the God of all the tribes, all the different skin colors. The Arabs, they used to treat blacks, there was a lot of racism also. They said that the blacks are, like they are monkeys and they are apes and all. And Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he protested strongly against that, God is not like this. You are not really dedicated to the true God. Because if you are, then your behavior cannot be this. God, sun shines on you as well as the black. So there is no division in God. He's Rabbul Alameen. So, like I earlier also said, they used to bury the female, child. But, these people of Makkah, they rebelled against this concept that we are not going to accept, we are not being dedicated to this Rabbul Alameen whom you're talking about. We want our gods, my God of my tribe and my God of my tribe, and my God will take care of his God and their tribe. It was like that. So they were not willing to accept this concept, and they started to persecute the Prophet, and they said, we'll not even let you also accept it. So when they started to become violent, they started to attack him. They killed a lot of his followers. those who accepted that, this is what God has to be. There were many people, from their heart, when they listened to the Prophet, they said, this is whom the God has to be. And, when they started to follow him, people, these political leaders of Makkah, they started to attack them, and they killed so many people, persecuted them, tortured them. So at that point, Islam said, there is no compulsion in religion. Chapter 2, verse 256 of the Quran says that okay, there is no compulsion. We are not saying that you have to follow this. We are asking for a dialogue. Let's talk about it. We are not saying that you have to follow it. There is no compulsion. But let's discuss, look at how we are living our lives. Come, let's discuss. This is what the Prophet ﷺ was pleading. Let's talk. Let's have a dialogue. Let's have a sincere talk about it, about who God has to be, who God is. And we are not saying that you have to follow this. If you want to follow. This is what, the Quran says in chapter 109, verse 6. Lakum dinakum waliya deen. To you, your religion, and to me, mine. Fine, there is no compulsion. Let's have a dialogue. And if you want to follow, your religion, we're not forcing you. You can follow what you want to follow. But let's have a talk. Let's, have a dialogue about it. So they did not, agree to it, and they kept, persecuting the Muslims. They tried to kill the Prophet also on this issue, and he had to migrate to Medina, leave his city, to go to another city. The people of another city, they really accepted his message. This is a lovely message. This is what we need. Please, you come here. We are tired of this lifestyle. We want this message which you are preaching. And when he even migrated, he left Makkah. The people of Makkah, they were continuously plotting against him, and they were bringing war upon him. And that's when, in the end, the Prophet ﷺ took to fighting in the defense of this concept of God. Quran says you have to defend this. If now you don't defend, then there will be no one talking about this. If you and your companions are killed or wiped off from the face of this earth, then there is no one talking about this concept, that we have to be dedicated to the God of love. So for sake of protecting this holy sacred idea, you have to fight. And one of the verses says, you hate war, but you have to fight. Chapter 2, verse 216 of the Quran says that you hate war. So in the religion which talks about God of love, of course they would hate war. Love and war, they are against. But the verse says you hate it, but you have to do it for the sake of the very religion, for the sake of dharma. Somewhat like in the Hindu Mahabharata, how people say it's a book of ahimsa, non-violence, and what you find in Mahabharata is continuous war. So not on the same principles. It's just an example. That somewhat on that pattern, Quran also says that you have to fight to protect this holy idea. If you don't, then you are against religion. You are not protecting religion. For the protection of religion, not for yourself. When it comes to you, you are willing to die. You are willing to be killed. But to protect it, you have to fight. So, some people highlight, the above story, about the Prophet and in the wars that took place, but they put it in such a out of context manner that in the end they draw the conclusion that as a Muslims you cannot be friends with non-Muslims. But as I said, there are many examples where the Prophet ﷺ was friends with non-Muslims. So one example is when Prophet ﷺ was boycotted for 2 years. It was the non-Muslims who protected him, ended his boycott. There was a man called Mutin. He even gave him protection, who was not a Muslim. Peace Treaty of Hudaybiyah, in which a non-Muslim tribe, group of tribes, they sided with the Muslims. So nowhere Islam says you can't be friends with Muslims. There are innumerable examples in Prophet's life, where, he was friends, he was discussing, in the last session which you had, there was this talk about religious scriptures are generally, they have monologue, they don't have dialogue. So, however, I was thinking that Quran was promoting dialogue big time. There are chapters about mutual consultation, and the Prophet ﷺ, didn't used to consider his word as the last word, but he used to, at times change his opinion based on what the companions, their opinion was. And there are innumerable examples about this. I'm not going into detail. Some people who try to show that, non-Muslims, and not all non-Muslims are kafir. I'm coming to that. I'm not going to go into detail of that word also. But many times in my life, I've seen that, some people, they highlight this set of verses. Of course, they have ulterior motives. So they highlight this, chapter 60, verse 1 to 6, and just a summary. Otherwise, the verses are too long. These set of verses, if you don't look at this part, this chapter 60, verse 1 to 6 says to Muslims that you can never be friends with non-Muslims. How can you be friends with kafir? And kafir is not non-Muslim. Not all non-Muslims are kafir. It's just an easy translation that I'm using. So it says, how can you be friends with kafir? Anyone who shows love, shows friendship, goes against religion, goes against, Allah and the Prophet. And many people just show chapter 60, verse 1 to 6. In my life, 4 times I've caught people doing this. And sadly, 2 times it was a scholar. It was a scholar, a religious scholar who was doing this. Twice. They highlighted chapter 60, verse 1 to 6, and they stopped. That you cannot be friends with the non-Muslims. And they do not say the same chapter, verse 7 to 9. They say chapter 60, verse 1 to 6. But they don't mention same chapter, verse 7 to 9. So, you come up till 1 to 6. Didn't you read 7, 8, and 9, the next 3 verses? The next 3 verses say that I do not forbid you from those non-Muslims, from those kafir, who don't persecute you. And I'm mentioning again and again, kafir is not an equivalent of non-Muslim. It's just an easy translation. It is not. So I do not forbid you from those kafir who don't persecute you for your religion. So if there's let's say a kafir, I'm not just saying a non-Muslim is a different criteria, I'm not going in details. But if there's a kafir who is not persecuting you for your religion, that if you believe in one God of love, I'll kill you. I'll throw you out of your house. I will not let you believe. I'll persecute you. I'll torture you. Somebody who's not doing that, even if he's a kafir, Allah says, Quran says, if you show kindness and be just to them, the first says, I forbid you to be friends. And this set of verses said, I do not forbid you. So you can be friends with them. Show kindness to them. Be just to them. And I will love you. In Islamic perception, Islamic way of vision, if you love the non-Muslims, that's a door of God finding God's love. Somebody who's not from your faith, if you show respect, if you show love, show justice, God would love you for that. So many people, some people, they do not highlight verse 7 to 9, and they only report verse 1 to 6. And like I said, twice it was, scholars who were doing it. So it's at times, it's a very sad situation that we find. Again, I'm and if you see, if you scale 1, 2, 3, so maybe, less than 200 kilometers is Abyssinian port. So the first migration happened here, and never in history, never ever in history, a Muslim army set foot in Abyssinia. I'm not going into the issue of wars. Maybe somebody will ask, and we'll go in that why did wars happen, with other countries. I'm not going into that. Basically, Abyssinia, in brief, they were a country which accepted to you your religion and to me mine. They were not forcing people. It was a Christian kingdom. The Prophet praised that Christian kingdom. And in that Christian kingdom, religion. I won't force you to follow our religion. You follow your religion, no problem. To your religion, and which the Quran says, to your religion, to me, my religion. Yes, that's the principle we also follow. And the Muslims lived over there for about 13 years. And even after that, because it was such a kingdom, Muslim armies, they had wars with Persia, with Romans, but right next door, Medina, where they migrated later on, was further away. It used to take 10 days to reach Medina, 10 days. And to Abyssinia, they could reach much faster. So nobody ever attacked Abyssinia. And the criteria of war, because they did not meet any community which was agreeing to your religion and to me mine. Lakum dinakum waliya deen. The Muslim armies never fought over there, even after the Prophet's time. So what about enemies? Coming to the last portion of our talk. What about enemies? What does the Quran say? It says, chapter 41, verse 34 says, and not equal are the good deed and the bad. Repel evil by that deed which is better. And thereupon the one whom between you and him is enmity will become as though he was a devoted friend. So the vision that the Quran gives is that it does not deny that you cannot have enemies. Quran says to the Muslims, says to the believer that, fine, you can have enemies. No discussion on it. Of course, anybody could have enemies. But it teaches that repel evil with good. And your enemy will become your friend. So it is teaching that the enemy of today can be a friend tomorrow. It's a very positive vision that the Quran teaches. And if we see, look at the life of the Prophet, when he started his mission, almost everyone was his enemy. And towards the end, everybody was his friend. Thomas Carlyle, the French thinker, 18th century French thinker, he said, he said to the Europeans in his age, you say that that Muhammad, he stood up with the sword in his hand Islam was spread through sword. One man with a sword in his hand against the whole world. Are you crazy? That's what he said to the Europeans in 18th century. That, it was not spread through sword. So it was spread through this formula. This is the secret of, the Prophet's success. That, in no time, it was like, a big bang and, it spread out across the world. The formula was, it was preaching about a God of love, and it was teaching that the enemy of today could be a friend tomorrow. In conclusion of my presentation, none of the ideas that we have discussed, or the worldview or the vision of Islam, we don't find anything which contradicts the concept of dialogue. In fact, verse 1 to 6, Quran says, don't be friends with those non-Muslims who are persecuting you for your religion, killing you because you believe in one God. So don't be friends with them. But it does not say, don't try to turn them into friends. So don't behave like friends till they are not friends. And how to turn them into friends? It gives a vision. To repel evil with good and turn the enemy into friend. So throughout we find that, I personally find, let's put it like that, I have not found in Islam any value or verse which stands against dialogue. In fact, I find that it promotes dialogue to a great degree. This is, in short, the conclusion. I have another page. These are some of my books I've written. I've written more than these books. PPT. Stopping screen share and now.
Right.
So please, the floor is open now.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Jamal, for your presentation. Mushtaq Sikandar wanted to ask a question, and then Sabiha Moore has raised her hand. and the subsequent conversion.
Yeah, thank you, Basit, sir, for your presentation. Uh, I don't have a question profoundly. I just have few observations and comments. The comments are basically what you stated about alcohol is quite a new interpretation for me, because again, Quran and in Ahadith, it stated adil khamri wal maisir, and then it stated that it's umul khabais, and the way you basically try to relate it with hatred, I find that interpretation quite new. I have not gone through this kind of interpretation. But again, this interpretation can be contested related to what you have stated. And Ahmad was Islam, try to discuss this whole thing that within the Muslim there was a practice of drinking alcohol and all those issues. So again, it becomes very problematic when we
You
comment on
argued,
these
sorry, your
issues.
voice is
And then
cracking.
related to the
Your voice is cracking. Can you switch off your camera so maybe your internet is weak or my internet is weak? So that who argued?
yeah, yeah. I am Mushtaq Sikandar. I am from Kashmir.
No, who
I
argued?
have
You said
been
somebody argued about alcohol. You said.
yes. Shahab Ahmed, in his book "What Is Islam," he stated that alcoholism was not harm in this sense, because again, it's a new interpretation kind of. So your interpretation is quite new, and it can be contested. So this was one observation. Another thing that you stated about the God of love, but we also find that in Quran, when the messages of the prophets, when they are delivered to a certain nation, like in case of Noah, in case of Lot, and other prophets and their nations, they are punished also by that God. So God again, Allah is again Kahar also. He is not just Rahim and Rahman only. So and even Prophet wished his enemies in that, if go by Imam Farahi's translation of this Itmam Hujjat concept. So that's what I want your comments on the issues of going al kahar and this bring to basically related to hatred. So this is the observation.
Okay. Behzad bhai, should we take all 2-3 questions and then take? Maybe they are
Okay.
connected also somehow.
All right. Okay. So Sabiha More then. Sabiha ma'am, your microphone is muted.
Sorry. Alan. Hello, Basit bhai. I'm Sabiha More, and I'm like everybody knows by now that I stay in a home which is basically ruled by interfaith. I married somebody who's not a Muslim, and last 35 years of my life, I'm a devout Muslim. I feel so. Maybe others may reject it. They are free to do that, including my own mother, who strongly believes that I have chosen the way of hell by getting married to somebody who's not a Muslim. And I constantly keep on fighting, saying that I'm the only one who will go to heaven from our family, because of 35 years I'm resisting and I'm following Islam. When everybody sleeps, I get up for sehri. When everybody is not doing anything, I pray, I read Quran, whatever other things are there. There are 2-3 questions actually. Honestly, before coming to the class, I did a bit of research on you. I saw your Ashoka series today. Somebody sent it in the group also, and I happen to understand that you were quite radical in the earlier years of your life, and later on, as wisdom dawned upon you, you started understanding the crossroads where interfaiths can meet. So my question is, what is it that has changed you from being radical to more liberal? One thing, and second thing is that if in your video you say that you need to ask questions, your mind is thinking, you have to ask question, and I think logical thinking is very important. Then why is it questioning not allowed in our faith. It say if you believe, you need to believe it, so why is questioning not allowed? I just don't understand. And of course you gave a pretty different interpretation of many things, which maybe we are looking at from a different glass and a different lens probably, which was revealed to it. And for me, for a person like me, I'm all acceptable. I can accept various ways to think, because I think that leads to more peace. And yes, I was born a Muslim and I would like to die as a Muslim. Like I've told my husband that I need to be buried next to my father in a kabristan. That's my last wish when I die. So I understand that our feeling towards religion is very, very emotional, but that should not stop us from thinking rationally. And when you ask rational questions to people who so-called, like call themselves the so-called illuminated minds, they get very excited and this thing. How did you face that in your life? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Maybe one more question, Behzad bhai, then we can start answering.
We don't have anybody else.
Okay. Then I'll start.
You can address them and we'll see if we have more questions. Yeah.
So the first question was from Brother Mushtaq. I hope I am not mistaken. So you said, my interpretation of about alcohol is new. It would be new if this verse is new, brother. I quoted a verse. You can note down the reference, Quran chapter 5, verse 91. And, if this is the point, I mentioned that, I've taken sessions at so many places and I ask, why does Islam, what is the criticism of alcohol according to the Quran or Islam, and they never quote this verse. So I'm not making this verse up. It is there in the Quran. So it's not a new interpretation, but it's a reminder of, what is already there. It simply says chapter 5, verse 91, please note and do check it, with a copy of translation that you have, that Shaitan's plan is to excite enmity and hatred between you with intoxicants. So I'm not making up this verse. It's there. And this is what I said, that we have forgotten even the real reason, which the Quran says that why alcohol, is forbidden. So I hope you understand that it's not a new interpretation, but it's a reminder of what is already there in the Quran. So you also mentioned about punishment of, different people and Allah being Qahar and, Jabbar, Qahar, these characteristics of Allah. Quran, this is a very important question that you have asked, which I deal in many other, topics. But in brief, if I say, Quran has a system of, telling how Allah judges people. Let's say, again, don't think it's a new interpretation. I'll be giving you exact chapter number and verse number. So if you have a pen and paper, you can note it down. In chapter 24, verse 21 and 22, which was revealed about, the case of Hazrat Aisha Radhiyallahu Ta'ala Anha, in the case of Hazrat Abu Bakr Radhiyallahu Ta'ala Anhu, that, the last chapter 24, verse 21 and 22, the last sentences of verse 22 says that, forgive and overlook. Don't you want Allah to forgive you? So those who forgive will find forgiveness. Chapter 11, verse 3 or verse 6, one of those, it says, anybody who does fazl, those who do fazl, grace on others, Allah will do grace on them. In a hadith, there are many other Quranic verses like this. In a hadith, it is very clear, only the one who shows rahim will find rahim. This hadith is from Hazrat Umar Radhiyallahu Ta'ala Anhu. Anybody only the one who shows rahim will find rahim. So even if you do a quick Google, hadith, only the one who does rahim will find rahim. that hadith with verse, exact references will come in 1 second and you can cross check. So there are many more hadiths like this. Only the one who's tolerant will find tolerance. So forgive, you find forgiveness. Mercy, you find mercy. Rahm, you find rahm. Fazl, you find fazl. You show anger, you find anger. You seek punishment for others, that's what you find. This is the way of measuring, our deeds, let's say in the Islamic vision. Like it comes in an Israeli riwayat. And if you understand Israeli riwayat, it says, the scale with which you measure is the scale with which you would be measured. So the way you judge other people, if you seek punishment for other people, that's what you'll find. If you seek rahm for other people, you'll find rahm. The hadith is very clear. Only the one who does rahm will find rahm. And I'm not making this hadith up. Go read. So I hope this clarifies that yes, Allah punishes, but whom does Allah punish? The one who turns away, who rebels, against Ar-Rahman, they will find punishments. They will find punishment. The one who rebels against Ar-Rahman, chapter 19, verse 44 says that Shaitan is a rebel against Ar-Rahman. So I hope this clarifies that your question. I hope it's clear. Otherwise, it's a long, lengthy question. I do discuss it in detail in few of my books and my talks in much more detail. But I hope this suffices for now. It suffices. Then the third question was, what changed me from radical to a non-radical person? I was sincere to Quran. When I began my studies, my allegiance was strictly to the Quran. That I will, Quran, Hadith, Sirah, that I will follow what I find in there. So I believed, Quran, justifies, hating, or, having, anger in your heart, or, having hate for somebody in your heart, or, seeking revenge, in your heart. But that's not what I found. The story that really changed me when I was reading the Quran, the story that really began my journey was the story of Habil and Qabil, Abel and Cain. It comes in chapter 5, verse 28, 27 onwards. In verse 28, it says, even if you kill me, I will not kill you. And this verse, that even if you raise your hand to kill me, I will not raise my hand to kill you. This is so struck me so heavily that, how can Quran be talking about such a thing? That even if you try to kill me, I will not try to kill you. What kind of, what is this Quran talking about? And this, really shocked my mind. And the third Khalifa, Hazrat Usman Razila Ta'ala anhu, he repeated this verse. And, he was martyred, he was killed. And he quoted from this story. When people came, come, let's, kill them, those who have come to kill you. And he quoted from this story. And, he followed this story of, the example of Habil, alayhi salam, that even if you try to kill me, I'll not try to kill you. So Islam has such an angle, and which was hidden from me. And when I found it in the Quran and in the stories, other stories, I was, shocked. The people who were trying to indoctrinate me, they were saying, we have to be, very hateful and angry with, the sinners. And in chapter 20, verse 43 and 44, I found that Firaun, who's the worst character in the Quran, whom Allah calls my enemy and the enemy of my prophet. Allah says in chapter 20, verse 43 and 44, go and talk to him gently. Perhaps he might change. Be gentle to him. It's a dialogue. It's about, go and have a dialogue with him. Be gentle to him. Don't go and say, oh, you sinner, you enemy of Allah, enemy of religion, enemy of prophet, hell to you. And, there's a miracle story that, the asa of the stick of Musa alayhi salam used to turn into a snake. He did not go and throw the stick on Firaun. you know, some of the people who are, you know, so full of violence, you know, they would, if they would get such a stick, they would go and throw the stick on Firaun, whereas he threw it in front of Firaun, you know, trying to, you know, be gentle to him and, you know, trying to change him. So when I found such stories, you know, I was like, I am with the Quran. And these are the things, you know, nobody's telling, nobody's talking about these things. So yes, many things, you know, when I give talks, you know, and I give talks in religious seminaries also, you know, not just, you know, in random groups. And even, you know, they find that all this is from the Quran. All this is from the Quran. And they, you know, many times they say that, you know, we are not thinking like this. We are not thinking like this, but it is there in the Quran. So this is what, you know, changed me. My allegiance was with the Quran first. And those people who were, you know, teaching me and saying, don't approach the Quran, you can't understand, my allegiance was second with them. So when I found such things, I changed. Of course, you know, again, this is a long story, cut short. So what you said, why is questioning not allowed? You know, again, this is a misconception or misteaching, let's say. The very purpose Quran was revealed, chapter 38, verse 29, says, you know, and if you have not heard these verses, so, you know, you should, you know, be glad that you're hearing them now. Because I was glad when I, you know, came across these verses.
Indeed, I am. Indeed, I am. I'm not a great scholar. I only do cherry biting, as you said, because I'm not a scholar. I'm a teacher of education. So I only read the Quran to satisfy some queries of my students. I'm not a scholar. I really am not. You know, but I have read a lot of Quran in order to defend myself for doing what I'm doing in life. So that's the only thing I've done. I'm not a scholar. No, I'm not a scholar.
So, yeah. So chapter 38, verse 29 says, Kitabun anzalnahu ilayka mubarakul liyadabbaru ayatihi waliyatazakkara ulul albab. We have revealed this book to you, the Prophet ﷺ is saying, so that, which is full of blessings, so that people may think on this book. So that people may think. It is a book which you need to ponder upon, and it's not simple thinking. Tadabbur is deep thinking. Everybody is a thinker. Everybody is a thinker, but Quran wants you to be deep thinker. You know, and deep thinking only happens when you question. Three terms, tawassum, tadabbur, and tafakkur. They come again and again, which means think, ponder, try to understand. You know, Quran is full of, you know, this message. You know, it says question, but of course, you know, there are some boundaries set. But within those boundaries, you know, it says, you know, think. Only the one who thinks finds. You know, one of the verses says, chapter 10, verse 100, it says, "Wama kana li nafsin an tumina illa biiznillah wa yajalu ritsa ala allazina la yaqilun." That without the permission of Allah, the faith cannot enter people's heart. Faith is being attached to what? And Allah puts dirt on those who do not use their reason, who do not think. So thinking and faith in this verse, chapter 10, verse 100 is together. Aql, you know, aql we also use. You know, yaqilun comes from aql. Those who do not use their reason, you know, they cannot attain to faith. They cannot attain to faith. Chapter 10, verse 100. So maybe there's some misunderstanding in some people who say, do not question. You know, maybe you should also put question to the right people. If they are not in a position to answer, that's what they'll say, don't question. So
no, I'll just quickly want to share one observation. I was a young girl and I'm very inquisitive by nature. If somebody tells me don't look behind, I'll go and look behind and find out what is it that I'm stopped to not to look for. So I'm very inquisitive by nature. I always try to question. So I remember when I was very young, 25 years back, a bunch of Indian Muslim women went to Allahabad High Court to ask for praying in the mosque. They were not allowed to go in mosque. In due course of time, my family shifted to UAE, and my parents now stay there along with my brother and everybody. And when I went to Al Zayed Mosque, I found there is a complete section, equally like a men, for a woman, and they can walk into a mosque and pray into the mosque. And every mosque in Middle East has been granting access to women who need to go to mosque in the middle of the desert. And then I realized, oh my God, in India, the Islam that I'm saying, or the kind of restrictions that is put on us as women, is entirely different from what the restriction has been put on women in the Middle East, and there can be different version of the same thing. And that is when I started questioning and reading more about Quran and understanding Quran. So as you said, you have to read a lot to come to an answer. Non-reading and only listening to others leads to a lot of confusion. Don't forget, Mr. Basit, yesterday French president has uttered some nonsense about Islam in the parliament, saying that we are very radical and it is not good. It did not bring a good taste to my mouth.
Ma'am, if you don't mind, if you have a question, ma'am, there are in the personal chat, I suddenly see there are a lot of questions.
Oh, okay, thank you.
So,
thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we could chat some other time, or maybe personally.
Sure,
yeah.
please.
So I just saw there are some, questions in the private chat. While Islam manifests,
Mr. Jamal, there are people. I mean, we can come to the comments later, but there are people who have raised their hands to ask questions before. So Nitya Prakash now. Nitya.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Good evening. First of all, thank you so much for this really prophetic insight. And for me, it was the first time exposure to listening to the verses of Quran. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I not only enjoyed, but it was resonating so much with the religion that I practice and I follow. So I am a Buddhist as a practitioner, and there was nothing diverging, when you understand the meaning from the depth, there was so much of coherence everywhere. The only one thing that is making me wonder is that when we talk about the notion of God or even shaitan, in Islam, is there a kind of a version where we are trying to externalize it? That the God and the shaitan are somewhere the external manifestations of the universe. In Buddhism, we often see a tendency towards utmost internalization. That, the God and the shaitan resides within me. It's the force that coexists. So even the notions like hatred, enmity, or, the workings of the devil, so-called, are somewhere manifestation of my, it's a manifestation of my own life. So my question here is that, sir, in Islam, then how do we sort of resolve this? Say when we feel hatred, when we feel envious, why do we have to be aware of it? Why do we have to discard it? How does we transform as an individual? My only, it's an inquiry, because I would really like to know that what is the mode of the prayer and the thought process, so that we can realize this God's consciousness, which is ever expansive, which is all loving and embracing. Because I also see life as a journey somewhere, and I'm a student of psychology. So I, for me, even religion is sort of like a theory of life and mind. So I hope I've stated my question very clearly. Thank you so much.
So I think you have posed a lot of questions in the brief paragraphs that you spoke. The one that I caught first was that does Islam believe, God and shaitan to be external or internal? Islam, I would say, and allow me to explain and not catch my words. It says it's both, in both cases. That shaitan, let's first comment on shaitan. It's both external and internal. Like I said, even human beings can be shaitan. And if you become shaitan, if a person becomes shaitan, it's his heart. So in a way, it recognizes that evil can be inside you. And then, like a friend could also be shaitan and come to you and, say, oh, come, let's commit some murders or, kill people. So that's the shaitan outside, and then the shaitan inside. So the thing is, Islam identifies or recognizes that there's a spirit world also. So like it could be a friend, a human friend, shaitan outside, and your heart inside is like also shaitan. So there's also a spirit, like human being, there's another race, spirit. And so Islam recognizes in the case of shaitan, it's both. When it comes to God or Allah, he's a separate being. He's not the manifestation of the universe. Universe is the manifestation of, let's say, is because of him. That's what Islam holds. So not the other way around, that I'm not an expert on Buddhism, so don't catch my words. Islam does not say that God is the God gets manifested, or God is a manifestation of universe. That's what you said. Don't catch words. But Islam says it's an external, and he's the creator of universe. Regarding God being inside, the light of God can be inside your heart. The light of God, not in the real sense, the God not in the real sense is not inside, but the light of God, the knowledge of God, the feeling, the presence of, God can be inside you, but God is not, is something separate from you. That's the Islamic understanding from the school of thought I come from. So what was the other thing? That how do you overcome hatred and envy, right? That's what you said?
Yes, sir. Like any of the negative workings of the devil or the shaitan, like if we are experiencing it in our own life with regard to somebody, say, or a member or an individual or a community. So what should be the mode of our thought process, maybe through a prayer, or so to attain what you said, like purification, which I really like the concept of, like tazkiya, like, where we self-purify ourselves. Yeah. So
there are many things. Two of the things I even mentioned in my talk, that, remembrance of Allah, that he's Ar-Rahman, he's Ar-Rahim. So, some qualities, characteristics of Allah, we have to take in us, like he's Rahim, he's, loving, caring, merciful. So that character we have to copy. And some other, like he's the punisher, he's, he's, somebody who punishes also. Those qualities we have to generally avoid. And, I think this topic also needs, because this topic is not very clear at times to many people. It's not been explained properly, the names of Allah and the connection with us of those names. So certain qualities we have to take, and certain qualities, we have to, like Allah says, forgive. Don't you want forgiveness? So if I want forgiveness, I'll also forgive. So it's with you, it's with zikr. Zikr is, jap, jise aap keh sakte ho, jap. So zikr is, you continuously, so for example, the prayer, the namaz we begin with, it says, Subhanakallahumma bihamdika wa tabarak asmuka. That, blessed are your names. Barkat wale hain tere naam. Barkat is, something which increases something which is little. So if I have a problem in sabr, I'm not being able to do sabr. Then if I do wa tabarak asmuka, barkat wale hain tere naam, your names are blessed. So if I'm lacking sabr, one of the names of Allah is Ya Sabur. So if I start doing zikr of Ya Sabur, Ya Sabur, Ya Sabur, my capacity to be patient will start to, increase. That's what blessing is. Barkat yehi hoti hai. This is how barkat is. So these are, some of the methods which traditionally have been used throughout Islamic history. Otherwise, there are many methods, muraqbah, meditation, and many things. But brief, these are the simple ones. I hope this is all the questions you had, right? Yes, Behzad bhai.
Right. There's a question from Ziaul Haq. He's not able to speak because of his poor internet connection. He has written his question in the chat box, which I think you can also read. He says, if Islam really gives the message of peace and dialogue, then why there is so much intolerance even among the Arabic-speaking Muslim in the name of Islam. Further, in the book Clash of Civilization, author tried to relate that religion is the main cause of clash between different civilization, which he justifies by giving the example of Yugoslavia and other geographical boundaries. What is your opinion on it?
First of all, if Islam really gives the message of peace, and why there is so much intolerance even in among the Arabic speaking, the problem is, first of all, I don't stereotype. Yes, there are problems in pockets, and at times, those pockets, they get so highlighted that, whole communities get colored. So in Arab countries, there are so many Arab countries where you can go, you can do a job, you can live, it's not that, everybody is coming to kill someone else. It's not like that. Of course, there are exceptions everywhere around the world in all communities, and not just Muslims. In other communities also, there are people like that. I say that even in them, it is there because, our approach to religion has been very, or for them has been very, ritual based only. And they have not, in my opinion, they have not, really even understood Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, properly, and what's our relationship with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. To begin with, their first lesson is missing. For example, I'll give you one example. The one who enters Quran, the purpose of Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim being there at the opening of the chapters is that it's like a gate. You enter through that gate. So somebody who does not enter through that gate, enters like a thief, does not enter remembering Allah is Ar-Rahman, loving, caring, and merciful. That's the name Allah has again and again and again and again, beginning of almost every chapter except one is mentioned. So, he could have mentioned different names. So he's also emphasizing Ar-Rahman a lot throughout the Quran. So somebody who enters Quran, for example, he reads a verse about, those people who are opposing the Prophet. Quran says they are deaf, they are dumb, they are blind. So this is how they will read, because they're not coming from the door of Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. They'll read like this. They are deaf, they are dumb, they are blind. They'll be full of anger, they'll be full of hate that they are deaf, dumb, and blind. Whereas somebody who enters through Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, remembering that Allah is Ar-Rahman, loving, caring, merciful, he doesn't read like this. He reads like they are deaf, they are dumb, and they're blind. He remembers a verse, another verse of the Quran, that, Allah says it's their hearts, it's not their face that is blind, it's their heart that is blind. He remembers another verse in chapter 10, verse 57, which says, Quran is a medicine, it's shifa for the diseases of the heart. So, the one who enters through Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, he becomes a doctor. He becomes a doctor. Okay, so they are deaf, dumb, and blind. And it's their, their hearts are blind. And hey, Quran is the medicine. So let's, be a loving doctor. And the one who does not enter through Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, he becomes a police cop, always questioning, why did you do this? Why did you not do? He's not concerned about, curing people. He's forcing his opinion. It's not about curing. It's about, catching them and just pointing, you are wrong, you are wrong, you are wrong. It's not about curing people. So Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim itself completely, if you enter through Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Quran suddenly is something else. And if you don't enter through Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Quran is, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim is the key, to open the Quran. So, a lot can be said on this question, a lot. But, I say the beginning is where the problem is. That's what, I guess, that's what the question was about. Clash of civilizations, again, we cannot blame religion for if somebody is, not following it properly, then, that person is to be blamed. If in your school, in your class, a student got 90 out of 100, another got 80, another got 70, and another got, 10. So because he got 10, you cannot blame the teacher. You cannot blame the teacher. There have been so many, enlightened ones, like a saint said, we do not come into this world, because they enter through Bismillah Rahman Rahim to understand the Quran. They reminded their students, we have not come into this world that if we see somebody sitting on the brink of hell, we kick him and throw him in hell. Mardud ja Jahannam mein. We have not come for this. We have come so that if we find somebody lying in hell, we extend our hand to him. That brother, hold my hand, and pull him out. That's the story of Musa alayhi salam and Firaun. That Firaun is in the worst hell, and Allah says, go and talk to him gently. He's my enemy and your enemy. Try to pull him out. So, this vision only comes when one truly understands Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and is sincere. And if this is not there, you come to the Quran with your hate and the sincerity is not there. You'll only find, verses which will, act like, support your ideas. And if you go sincerely that, okay, not my ideas, but I'll see what is really there, then you'll find that, Quran is really a book of love. There is war, like I said, but the chapter 2, verse 216 says, you hate war. You hate war, but you have to fight to protect these ideas. So I hope this answers the question.
Right. Urusa Mushtaq.
Good afternoon, sir. It was very nice listening to you. I found the lecture very intriguing. I do have a couple of observations and questions, whatever you like to say. So my first question and observation is that since I understand we are talking entirely from the perspective of Islam, that is why we're using it as a prism to understand the questions that we are asking. But at the same time, are we not forgetting the premise that the things that we are saying, we are precisely placing Islam in the position that we are trying to take it away from, which is a reactionary position. That is exactly the trap we are falling into, putting it exactly into a reactionary position. Because as you yourself mentioned, one of the verses where you said that unless and until someone is not doing anything bad to you, do not be bad to them, be as accommodating as you can be. And even if, like, from the examples of our prophets and our caliphs we have seen, even after people have been bad to you, still be accommodating to them, to the as much as you can be. But I mean, I do not think that as humans in 2020 we possess the character or we possess the mental abilities to be able to overlook certain things. I personally do not find as humans in 2020 to be as accommodating as we would want to. We would all want to accumulate the characteristics of Prophet ﷺ and the caliphs and everyone who followed him in the true sense. But I do not think it's possible. It's very altruistic of us to say to, you just follow this, just say, see, this is what Allah Ta'ala is saying. Because as Muslims and as human beings in the first sense, we are bound to react to a certain way. And because I also happen to go through your previous work and how you came to the point where you are right now, and I understand that you moved from a certain understanding to a certain understanding. But for you to be able to move from a certain understanding to a certain understanding, I think there must have been a change in circumstances that allowed you to make that move. But for certain people that is not available. For my master's thesis, I did my thesis. I looked at Islamic State from the perspective of emotions and like through the perspective of international relations and sociology, how the Islamic State employs emotions to enable people to subscribe to their ideology or to recruit people in that sense. And I found it very astounding. I mean, honestly, the findings of my thesis were astounding to me because I did not realize that discourse can have such an impact, and our emotions are so impactful as far as foreign policy and these big things are concerned. I would have never linked emotions to geopolitics, but after that I did. So I do not understand why are we not shifting the premise. Why are we dragging Islam into being something which is reactionary? I mean, I do not think, I mean, we're not Gandhis, we're not going to bring our another cheek if someone is going to slap the one cheek. I mean, many of us might be, but I do not personally think that, like, the positionality that I come from, I can afford to do that. I mean, I'm a Muslim woman, I'm a hijabi, I've lived in India for 5 years, and I come from Kashmir. Right now, I'm living in a Western country. I cannot afford to be docile and meek. I cannot just sit back and tell people, yes, please, do you want to discriminate on the basis of my identity? Despite the fact I'm an educated woman, I've grown up in a conflict, please go ahead. You are a cis white man, do it. No, they can't. I can't do that. I do not personally feel that I am capable of doing that. So I do not understand how are we going to change that circumstance. How can you tell me to change my circumstance, because it has not changed. It has not changed for me, even though I have lived in 3 different positions. I have lived in Kashmir, I've lived in India, I've lived in the UK for some time now. So it has not changed for me. I still have the same fears that I had. I still face the same humiliation. My dignity is still at question. There is no change of circumstance for me. People are privileged, I am not. How am I expected to, you know, look at just the good of it and not be, it really pains me to use this word, and not be radicalized, quote unquote, because I also find that word very problematic. That's one. And second thing is that you used an interpretation of lakum dinakum waliyadin, to you is your religion and to me is mine. So there was, while I was doing my research, there was another interpretation that I came across which said that to you is your recompense and to me is mine. So that word of going from religion to recompense, it sort of brings into it a very multifaceted aspect. This one word gives it a very multifaceted aspect, because when you're moving from religion to recompense, recompense is not only for a Muslim. It's not, recompense is not just for me. Recompense is also for someone who does not subscribe to the identity of being a Muslim. So the surah that this particular verse is from, it was in context of Prophet's conversation with the non-Muslims of Medina. They were trying to humiliate him. That is the word I would use, because I also looked at it from that emotion of humiliation. They were trying to humiliate him into colluding with them. They wanted him to accept that idolatry is not prohibited, you know, in the sense, I'm not sure if my vocabulary is right, but they wanted him to collude to them in the sense that, you know, we are not wrong, you are not wrong either, but accept that we are not wrong. You have to accept that. So the Prophet in response to that said that to you is your recompense and to me is mine, even though I am in a position where I am the minority, where I do not have the means to fight you in quantity or in quality for at that point of time, because the Quran revelation had not yet been completed. I still would say that to you is your recompense, to me is mine. So he was not deviating from his standing, from his identity, but he was giving them a space. He was indulging in a dialogue with them, and that did not require him to move away from his positionality, even though his circumstance was of the worst possible kind, right? So I do not think that any one of us right now is capable of even being in the position of those non-Muslims. I do not think so. I do not think that we can have a table right now. I cannot ask, for that matter, why would I speak for anyone? I cannot ask a Kashmiri Muslim to go and sit with someone from the Indian state and talk about peace and dialogue. I just cannot. I cannot ask a woman to be there who has been raped, molested, subjected to a lot of war crimes. I cannot tell her that, listen, this is what your Quran tells you. She'd be like, okay, God aside, what about what happened to me because of my identity?
Yeah.
So that change of circumstance is not there, which I understand must have been there in your case. So I am not able to reconcile with these ideas. As much as I am trying to reconcile, it is not possible for me.
Look, you said a lot of things. And you know, this topic that we have discussed today, you know, it's not a topic that can really be covered, you know, in one session. You know, it can't be, you know, just a 1.5 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. You know, it's a big topic. There are many questions, I'm sure. Even beyond this, you will have more questions. If you just stop and what we have discussed, you'll have even more questions. So, you know, I personally, you know, these questions in with, you know, the students that are with me, you know, they start to clarify, you know, after, you know, about 6 or 7 sessions, you know, the whole jigsaw puzzle starts to come together. Regarding, you know, we can't be, this, or we can't be that. I would say, before Gandhi, I would quote Habil alayhi salam, chapter 5, verse 28. Even if you raise your hand to kill me, I will not raise mine to kill you. Or Hazrat Usman Razillah Ta'ala anhu, who quoted him and, did not fight, but he was, martyred. So, of course, Gandhi is also there. But, in the Islamic paradigm, we also have these characters. Habil alayhi salam is the son of Adam alayhi salam, So I agree, you or me or nobody can simply, rise to their maqam. If today I say, run a marathon, can you run it? No, you cannot. You cannot. If I say, okay, run half a kilometer, keep running for 1 week, then make 1 kilometer, then make 2 kilometers, then make, 5 kilometers, then a day will come, you'll be able to run. Islam, this is again something which Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was very particular about, but these concepts are not clear. You must have heard the terms Muslim, Mu'min, Muhsin. What is the difference? Muslim, Mu'min, Muhsin. Why are there these three terms? These are not equal maqams. These are not equal. Above Muslim is Mu'min, above Mu'min is Muhsin. And their behavior and their reasoning is very different. This is not the talk today, I can go into the details, but I have, spoken on it at length, from giving Quranic verses, giving hadiths, showing Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Sahabi coming to Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and saying, he's a Mu'min, and Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam saying, no, don't call him a Mu'min, he's a Muslim. Now, we wouldn't know, today nobody would talk like this, but it's a Sahih hadith. Don't call him a Mu'min, he's a Muslim. And the Sahabi again said, he's a Mu'min. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, no, call him a Muslim, he's not a Mu'min. A verse of the Quran also says that the Bedouins, it's in Surah Nisa, I think, that the Baddu, they call themselves that we have become Mu'min, but no, they have not become Mu'min, say they have become Muslim. So, people have their own maqams. So, you can't simply jump into a marathon run, today. It happens, you come, what Habil alayhi salam achieved or what Hazrat Usman Razillah Ta'ala anhu achieved is not, cannot be achieved by, without any training, without any meditation, without tazkiyah, without right guidance. These maqams cannot be achieved. What you are saying that, wrongs are happening, oppression is happening, I'm not denying any of those things, any wrong that might be happening. But, in my presentation, I was showing to you the highest form of Islam, which is ihsan, muhsin. About muhsin, Allah says, chapter 3, verse 134, that those who spend when they have and when they don't have, and they swallow their anger and forgive. Allah loves muhsinin. Chapter 3, verse 134. Allah loves the muhsin. So who's a muhsin? Muhsin is somebody who has achieved the maqam, that he can swallow the anger and still forgive. And forgiveness is not about simply forgiving. In the case of Hazrat Aisha Razillah Ta'ala anha, if you see, there was a, I don't know if you know about the case, there was a lie, against her. And Hazrat Abu Bakr Razillah Ta'ala anhu, he said, now I will not help such people who are speaking like this against my daughter. And the verse, chapter 24, verse 21, 22, about which I talked before, was revealed, that do not stop your hand from not giving. Give. If I do not purify you, nobody can purify you. Purification is about tazkiyah. So, Hazrat Abu Bakr was at another level. Not everyone was at that level. So many Sahabas were struggling to forgive. Many Sahabas found it easy. So I understand what you're saying. And it's not a, easy path to turn enemies into friends. But, this is the path, any community, not just us. If we feel we are surrounded by enemies, we have to turn them into friends. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in 23 years, he turned all his enemies into his friends. That is the ideal, and that we have to recognize. We might say, we are not being able to do this. 23 years, 23 years, 23, I'm emphasizing on 23. Look how long have, many conflicts gone. For 23 years, actually less than 20 years, Sulh Hudaybiyah and Fatah Makkah happened in 17 or 18 years. He achieved turning his enemies, worst enemies into his friends, dearest friends. And I even showed you the formula. The Ummah, we have to somehow rise. Okay, we have been wronged. But, do we want this wrong to happen to continue to 10 generations? One generation has to stop and, somehow try to overcome and turn enemies into friends. And, it's a very big, brave and courageous step that the Ummah needs to take. Otherwise, where is it ending? Where is it ending? It has to end in friendship. And what are we doing? For chapter 41, verse 34, today the Ummah at times does not even know this verse. It says, repel evil with good and your enemy will become friend. So as a faithful, as a believer, if you believe that if we repel evil with good and the person does not become my friend, then your faith is in question in Quran. If you really say, I'm a believer in Quran, then you have to believe that repel evil with good and your enemy will become your friend. And if you say, no, this does not happen, then you're questioning a verse of Quran. You're questioning the belief that Allah is teaching, the knowledge of Allah. So these are the things the more mature of the community have to think about, that where are we leading, where are we going? Is there any end to it? The end to it has to be like in the Sunnah, it was in friendship. Okay, they are enemies, they are oppressors, they are Firaun. They are Firaun, okay. But how can we turn, how can we change Firaun? How can we walk on the, try to change Firaun? How can we at least walk on the path of Musa alayhi salam? Nobody is like Firaun today. If you compare what Firaun did and what something else might be happening, there is no comparison in what Firaun was doing. And to that also what Allah was teaching, at least if we cannot follow it, we have to at least recognize it. That what is the purpose of Islam? Can it be to continue enmity and hatred forever? Can it be that? Can that be the purpose of Islam? This is the question that the thinkers, the more mature ones, should think. Again, this is a very deep and big topic. That fine, they are enemies. Fine, what are we doing to turn them into friends? That's the question we have to ask. I keep saying, I always tell my students, that leader is not someone who points who the enemy is. Basing this verse, chapter 41, verse 34. Leader is not someone who points, he's the enemy, they are the enemy, she's the enemy. Leader is someone who shows, okay, they are the enemy. Now what can we do to turn them into friends? How can we take Shaitan out? Like I said, Shaitan brings enmity. How can we bring Shaitan out and bring the children of Adam alayhi salam together? This is, the more mature of the faithful. These are the questions that are there in their head. And this is a very path, where you have to really jihad bin nafs. It's a path where you have to continuously struggle with yourself. Kill your ego, so rise above it. Otherwise, it's an endless. One generation suffers, and the steps we take, we ensure that next 10 will also suffer. Which generation will stand up and say, okay, let's turn enemies into friends. We have seen enmity, now let's turn and look towards friendship. And this is what Shaitan would not want you to see, would not want us to see. He does not want friendship between human beings. So, what you have said, I completely agree. But, this view exists in a parallel. I'm not denying whatever you have said. I'm with you on that. But this view is a parallel running to it. So, I hope I made my point clear.
Right. Ziaul Hassan.
Hello. Okay. Jazakallah, Janab Basit Sahab, for your nice presentation. Really, it's very connecting to me. So my question is actually not a direct one, but it's an indirect question that someone actually asked to me, but I am able to give a satisfactory answer. As you have discussed today about shaitan, the concept of shaitan and all the things that it could be a spirit or a mankind. So the question is that if the shaitan is so much powerful, so why it is not under the control of Allah. So it's, Allah is, as you said, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allah is ar-Rahman and ar-Rahim. And La ilaha illallah, nahi koi uske siwa ibadat hai. So all, despite of this, I have my full faith. It's not my question. I'm just asking from on behalf. But if
Important question.
Allah is so powerful and all, yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. I said it's an important question.
Yeah. So if Allah is supreme power, then how the shaitan is so much powerful? Then it is able to disguide the follower of Allah, the Muslim, the other mankind. So this is the question. I think the answer to this question is not available. It's because of the lack of dialogue, proper dialogue. Either we are not approaching to the correct scholars, or the scholars just read out the Quran, not understand it. You said that this is from Bismillah to the end, to the Surah Nas. This is the proper way, but they are not doing, they just read out it. Or someone to just give a negative image of Islam, just point out the things in between, in the middle of the verses they take and just give the translation of it. So this is not the correct way. This is the actually the lack of dialogue which I think. So I just want to know over this from you. What's your point? Thank you.
Brother Ziaul, it's a very important question you have asked, but I would start by saying don't stereotype. You just said the scholars are not, thinking about it, or, so I wouldn't agree with that statement of yours. Let's say, there are all kinds of people, all the
I forget
people.
it's not,
yeah. So let's not say it for, as a general statement. Yes, some might be like that, but, we cannot say for everyone.
There are some.
So about shaitan, tell me, Zia, if I ask you, come, in the night, let's stand somewhere in the corner when it's dark, and, let's attack somebody and you take his money and run away. Huh? What will you say? You'll say, Assalamu alaikum, so nice meeting you. I don't want to know you in future. That's what you'll say, right? The question about, how can Basit Bhai be so strong that he can influence me? Or, how is he so powerful that, he can misguide me? Where are this question coming from? I am a creature and I can be shaitan, like I said. Or anybody can be a shaitan, may Allah protect us, But shaitan is a creature like us. He can only tempt you. Like I can only say it to you. I cannot force you to do it. That's the very concept of shaitan. It's not, he's not any more powerful than I am or you are. He can only, try to tempt us. That's it. That's what the Quran says. Why I don't understand why people think shaitan is very powerful and, he's not. He's just like I am or you are. You can tempt me to do good or you can tempt me to do evil. And that's what he do. Nothing more, nothing less. So, there is nothing, power attached to shaitan. No special power attached to him. I can tempt you and you can say, sorry, stay away. And that's what Islam say towards shaitan. Sorry, auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Say that and walk away. So there's no question that how powerful he is, he's as powerful as Allah. No. He's just like me and you, another creature, nothing more. He tempts. That's the answer. I hope it's clear.
No, actually, the question is that who has given the power to shaitan? This
who
is
has given the power to me?
That I am asking.
That's what I'm saying. Who has given the power to me? The one who has given power to me. I can say, Ziaul, tonight, after this talk, go and, kill someone. Of course, don't do it. I'm just saying it. I can say this, right? I'm saying it to you right now. Who has given me the power? The one who has given me the power to say this has given him the power to do that. What's so special in it? You can say this to someone else. You can say, okay, steal some money. You can say, commit some crime. So who's giving you power? You have got some power and he has got some power. And no special power. This is the power. He shares this power. We have that power and he also has that same power, to tempt us to do evil or good. But he uses it for evil. I hope this is clear.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, Basit Bhai?
Yes, we have two more questions. Saeed and Mr. Naz. Saeed first.
Basit, can you consider me as the third person to question?
Inakshi? Okay, right.
The third
Yep.
one.
Yes, Said, please go ahead.
Yeah, just my one would be kind of complimentary comments to the Basit Bhai. Sorry if it will be every time I'm kind of trying to just commenting, not questions. But I would just compliment Quran's stance, yeah, and our its misrepresentation. Yeah, Miss Urusa said, yeah. So there is no prototype, yeah. No one can be. Only the Prophet ﷺ is the prototype, and Sahaba, yeah. They are true prototypes of Islam, and no one else could be to that extent. And in this,
And even they are not equal. Prophet and Sahabas are not equal.
no, I mean
Yeah.
the prototypes. Ideal one, of course, the first one, number one, is the Prophet ﷺ, and the next Sahaba, yeah, the ones who saw him. And it decreases as the time goes farther than the Prophet ﷺ. The time and the prototype being following, being ideal prototype decreases the level. But in this regard, Yusuf, I think you know Yusuf Islam, Cat Stevens, yeah.
Yeah.
His quote, like his saying is really like summarizing the Muslims, yeah. Let's say Muslims. So he says like he's really happy that he came across with Quran before meeting Muslims. Otherwise, like would not have. He might not have ended like becoming Muslim, embracing Islam. And the point, like God's opposing by Iskandar Bhai, he asked the question about the like different names, qualities of Allah. So yeah, there Allah is the only one who comprises, like who holds opposite names, who can hold opposite names, and the ayats which are given in Quran are like just to give examples of how like bad people or like evil people end up. Those who opposed openly Noah, yeah, and after Prophet Muhammad SAW, there is no such punishment, like communal punishment. So those are the examples so that we could follow and be precautious about. And radicalization, it was again, I guess, about Miss Urusapa. Yeah, people who are behind this, yeah, you have met them. I have met few of them. They are usually playing on, yeah, they are experts on psychology, human psychology. Yeah, they're the ultimate goal is making money. Yeah, it's all about weaponry production and like all this cycle. And they know people's weak points. So what can we do? What we can do is like this the In Dialogue Foundation make these kind of things more. Yeah. We should spread the message. Yeah, what true message? Now, like people are on the side of this very minor group. Yeah, very minor group, and like they are making a lot of noise. But we should maybe compete and win them by the good messages of Islam and understanding of Islam. Yeah, thank you very much. Like it was very time to time, it was very emotional, very enlightening. Thank you very much. I hope we'll meet someday, and I'll try to explore more about the ideas. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah. Sure.
But there are two more questions. I think you can take them all, both of them together, and then address them, as we have 20 minutes left. So Shabista Naz, Shabista, you please go ahead, and then Meenakshi.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are.
Thank you, Jamal sir, for the wonderful presentation. Actually, my questions are like personal in the sense that I just wanted to know what are the sources, means like there are multiple sources to read Quran. Okay, so you find a different kind of translation and its meaning in Ashraf Ali Thanvi, for example. Okay, and if you are reading something right now I am referring to means I am personally reading the translation by Muhammad Asad. Okay, so I found like there are they are two different worlds, like they are the kind of idea they are capturing is entirely different. The way we say and the way we quote Quran, it would become entirely different when we read Ashraf Ali Thanvi, and on the other hand when we read Muhammad Asad translation. So what are the sources, or what was the main source which you found very intriguing, or that helped you to understand Quran better, to know the religion better? And the second one is I just wanted to know the practical insight from your field. Like when you go to someone and discuss religion, it's very difficult issue. Okay, as you have said, lakum dinakum, that kind of versus the site. Okay, so whatever you know, that is for good for you. So within the Islamic, within the Muslim community, they also use this kind of quotation to, okay, whatever you understanding, you will be awarded or be punished according to your sin. So whatever I know the religion, that is best. Okay, so I don't want to have a dialogue. So when you go in the field, what kind of challenges you face? So these are the two things which I wanted to know. Thank you.
Most welcome. The first thing you said was, you read different translators. As far as I know, Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanvi wrote in Urdu. So did you read it in Urdu? And Muhammad Asad wrote in English, right?
Yeah.
So
just actually somebody introduced me to Muhammad Asad. Earlier I was reading it like in most of the, I think, North Indian family, we have the translation by Ashraf Ali Thanvi, so that's why I didn't expose to the the other ones.
So I say you read as many as you can. That's how, because Quran is an ocean, and sometimes one word, like how I translated Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Rahim means love, care, and mercy. So Bismillahir Rahmanir becomes a full paragraph. So if you read more than one, translation, then it helps in broadening. If you are really serious about your research, then you should read, Muhammad Asad, Abdullah Yusuf Ali, Mohsin Khan. If you're into your translations, different translations. In Urdu and Hindi also there are other, translators. So the more you read, the deeper connect you will find. Sometimes, when I read, if I read, because different translators use, different words to translate one single word. So sometimes in one verse, in one translation, I feel more connected. And sometimes, when I read another verse from another translation, I feel more connected. So, some words, this increases your, depth. Then, so it's good if you read, different translations. It helps gain depth. And the other thing you asked was, sorry?
Actually, my first question was related to your idea Quran, like from where you got, means is there any kind of godfather figure or something which led to you to this is right, or just refer to this kind of books, or what means? Once, as you have already mentioned, that this is an ocean, so once you go you'll lost in it. Otherwise means you need some kind of path or framework how to go, and so I just want to know your journey or your experience on that?
Look, I say, I've been working against sectarianism, and thus I do not generally refer to my particular background, though I'm from Sunni, but I don't specifically mention which group. But yes, I've sat at the feet of, many scholars. I have studied from the original sources, like the Sira, Ibn Ishaq, Ibn Hisham, these are the original sources. Of course, I've read newer, commentaries also, but the Quran, in the original, like, word to word, or referring to the Arabic directly, or different translations, the Sira in the original, the Hadith in the original, so this is the right way. You complete the Quran, you do it 2 or 3 times without commentary, you cover Hadith, you cover Sira, and then again you start to, by the time you do the Quran 2 or 3 times, you read the Sira, and you start, at least like a book, like a concise Mishkatul Masabi kind of an encyclopedia of Hadith. If you do go through, then you're really in a position that, you are, things start to, join, make sense. And you refer to the commentary, you read the Usul al-Tafsir, because everything has to be in a boundary, and the Usul and all, they have been laid down centuries ago. So following all that, you are able to see what the book is really saying. And Quran is an easy book. Yassarna al-Quran. Indeed, we have made Quran an easy book. So it's an easy book, with a little, of course, it does not mean easy book, does not mean it comes flying into your mouth. You have to take your hand and, bring it to your mouth. It starts to open on you by Allah's grace. So this is what my journey has been like.
Thank you. Now we have 2 more questions. Yes, Meenakshi and Ubairul Hamid. Basit, maybe you can take notes if people are asking too many questions.
Okay.
So,
Sorry, Basit sir.
First, precisely mention also what is your question, and give a little explanation mentioning that this is my question. So that would be easier for me.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes, sure.
You didn't answer the second one. I just wanted to know the practical issues when you go on the ground and you interact with people. What kind of challenges you face, to make them understand what the correct way of religion, what way means, to make them understand that this is not the radical path, is not the right one. So what are the challenges you face and how you mitigate them? So I just wanted to know.
I do not get into debate. Debate is not the path of Islam. Allah says in chapter 16, verse 125, invite all to the way of your Lord with wisdom and beautiful preaching. And if there's an argument, make it in a gracious tone, gracious way. So it's saying invite all to the way of your Lord with wisdom. It means not with foolishness. Wisdom, invite with wisdom, not with foolishness. Make it beautiful, not ugly. It should be in a gracious tone, not in a way that, I've proved you wrong and you are jahil. Not in that tone. It's not debate. Islam, when we talk about, Ar-Rahman, Allah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, when we introduce him, I do not take the path of debate. I am against the path of debate in introducing him. We are not going to defeat somebody. We are not going to, I'll prove you wrong, I'll prove you an ignorant. It's about, with wisdom, what does it mean? You talk, you approach, you address the heart, not the mind. For example, when I meet somebody, I say, look, I refer to Allah says, sun is an ayat. Sun is a sign. This sign is shining on you and shining on me. And I kind of Rabbul Alameen. These things are very clear and they hit your heart. So start with basics. Start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Whatever firqa, whatever sect somebody is from, say, okay, we can fight about, how to pray namaz or how can do this, how can do that. First, let's talk about Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Let's not debate. Let's talk about Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And it really does wonder. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim is a wonderful formula, and it really, you'll experience. It will change the whole conversation and the barakat it will bring in the discussion. Once you leave debate and enter through Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, it will be different. So this is my approach.
But actually, like on the basic principle, there is
Kavista, please.
just
Now,
I'll be brief.
in
I
10
just
minutes. Yeah, you can maybe ask your questions later to him. We need
Personally,
to.
also, you can contact me, no problem.
Yes. Meenakshi, you please go ahead.
1 second, 1 second. Let me switch on the charger. Huh? 1 second. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, Basit. I am Meenakshi. I'm from the northeastern part of India. And like I have, like your lecture was really very good, which was related to Quran. And I'm not exposed to it coming from a mixture of Hinduism and Buddhist background. But now, like, we are, like, I am brought up in an agnostic model. So I just wanted to know that who exactly are shaitans? Like, and are shaitans are the ones who doesn't follow Islam, or are and also are the shaitans ones who are Muslims but have become agnostic or atheist? Are they shaitans? And what are the characteristics of like shaitans? Is there any like list, you know, like the features of the list of shaitans? Like if you are this, that means you are a shaitan. Is it there in Quran? Like, is there any list?
So it's an important question you've asked. You've asked many things in this, which has many concepts. But let's start with what you asked in the end, the list. I showed this PPT. I hope you can see it.
Yeah, I have read this, yeah.
Yeah, so all this is not, I'm not, bringing it from out of, thin air. All this is in the Quran. I'm not, instead of giving every verse, imagine if I give, these are 7 or 8 points. If I give verses, my, presentation would still be continuing. So this is what, Shaitan is. He, was a racist. He was a supremacist. He was a hater. He was an arrogant person. He was a believer in one God. But he was a rebel against Ar-Rahman. So, if you have already taken a look at it, then who's Shaitan? In brief, again, he was one of the greatest worshippers of God. One of the best worshippers of God. He still believes God is one. You cannot convince him that there are 2 gods or 3 gods or 5 gods. Quran says in chapter 19, verse 44, from the mouth of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, that Shaitan is a rebel against Ar-Rahman. This is, Quran claims that it's a book of wisdom and no word is used just like that. So the character of God, which is used in this verse, is Ar-Rahman. Shaitan is not a rebel against Al-Ahad. Al-Ahad means one. Al-Wahid, the only one. He's not a rebel against Al-Ahad and Al-Wahid. He's a rebel against Ar-Rahman, chapter 19, verse 44. And Ar-Rahman is the God of intensely loving, caring, and merciful nature. So, somebody could be misguided. Somebody, could be lost, but not necessarily Shaitan. That's the Islamic view. The worst case scenario of Shaitan is that, he's a great worshipper and he's arrogant. He's, he says, oh, I know everything. And he looks down upon those, who he thinks are lesser than me. He lives in a supremacist attitude. These are the things these are his signs. He's full of hate. He desires destruction. That, I desire punishment. Shaitan desires punishment for people. They should go in hell. Hell is like punishment. So Shaitan desires people to get punished. So those who follow him, they could be great worshippers, but they would desire punishment. I'll tell you a hadith. It's from Musnad Ahmad, and it's a grade. You wouldn't know, but I'm saying it for the Muslim audience. Its grade is Hasan. 4 chains in Musnad Ahmad, 3 are Daif and 1 is Hasan. The Prophet ﷺ said is the hadith about the first man whose hand was cut. And the punishment as a, for the punishment of the thief. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, the Prophet said, when some companions, Hazrat Ibn Masud Razallahu Ta'ala Anhu is one of the companions, somebody came to him and said that, oh, companion of the Prophet, much after the Prophet had passed, this man has taken alcohol, tell us what to punish him. And his face color changed. And he said, I remember you have certainly made me remind the time when we caught, the man who's, the first thief whose hand was cut. And he narrated the story. He said, we caught a thief and we dragged him to the Prophet. And we said, oh Rasulullah, he's a thief. Let's cut his hand. Let's, implement the law. And Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he was very upset. And we said, Rasulullah, you look very upset. What happened? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam replied, and you can check this hadith. I can later on give the exact references also. These are the hadiths, at times people do not highlight. And I asked, why do they not highlight? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, you are siding with shaitan and you want me to be happy. You are siding with shaitan and you want me to be happy. He's your brother. You could have forgiven him. Haven't you heard? Chapter 24, verse 22, forgive and overlook. Don't you want Allah to forgive you? Oh, Muslims, no. If you bring such a case, the case of hudud, to the ruler, he will implement the had. He will implement the had. So, shaitan, in this hadith, it's clear, you are siding with shaitan. Shaitan wants punishments. Brothers don't want punishment. He said, he's your brother, you could have forgiven. If your brother steals something and brings to you, you'll be like, why have you stolen? Before he complains to the police, come, let's return, make an excuse, try to mend it. You won't drag him to the police station, would you? And that's what Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is complaining to the companions. So, shaitan is somebody who seeks punishment for people. Shaitan is somebody who wants people to be destroyed. He could be, a great worshipper, no doubt. This is the introduction of shaitan in the Quran and in the hadith literature of Islam.
Okay, thank you
I
very
hope it
much.
is clear. It can be spirits as well as human beings. It can be both.
Okay.
It can be both.
And my second question is, if you may allow, Faiza.
All right, please go ahead. Very quick.
Yeah, and my second is that in Quran, like as you've mentioned now, I mean bit earlier, that liquor consumption of liquor is haram there. What about the smoking? Is it allowed or is it not allowed?
Look, alcohol is haram, clear cut in Islam, and nobody can argue against it. I think Brother Mushtaq was saying something, but his voice was breaking. That somebody was arguing in favor of alcohol. No, nobody can argue. It's very clear in the Quran. Regarding smoking, many scholars have given an opinion that since it is something which harms you, you can't harm yourself, so it's haram. But some other scholars, they have said, because Quran has not said it explicitly, we can't say it. But of course, it is, there's a category between halal and haram, which is makruh, extremely disliked. So smoking is something which is extremely disliked. There is no, debate about it. So the choice is really extremely disliked or haram. This is the view of, the scholars in Islam.
But smoking is not that clear, I guess.
Because it's, the debate is there because no verse of the Quran or Hadith explicitly mentions tobacco. So maybe it wasn't there, in Arabia at that time. Somebody has to, look into it deeply, but I guess it wasn't. There's no comment in Hadith or Quran on tobacco. So, but it's something which harms you.
Okay.
So,
So I just want to be clear on one thing.
You have to be very quick now. Just summarize, and we have to give opportunity to Uber.
Just one thing related to my actually second question. Like I have seen, like it's that like whosoever does haram, they go to narak, they say, and who or else they go to Jannah, that is Jannat, the heaven. So I have seen, like I have traveled around a lot of Muslim countries like Morocco, Tunisia, and even in Istanbul, I see a lot of males, like they smoke throughout all the year except in the month of Ramadan. So how Quran says, will they go to the narak or Jannat, and if this is so, then how Quran has defined how are things in narak and how are things in Jannat? I have got no idea, being an agnostic.
Meenakshi, right?
Yeah.
Excuse me. Sorry. Would you like to take question from Ubair and then address both of them together, or would you like to address Meenakshi's question first and then Ubair?
Okay. Let's take that question.
Okay. Ubair, please go ahead.
Yeah, basically, I wanted to ask about the concept of qital and jihad in Islam, since the speaker has talked a lot about friendships and everything. Why do we have the concept of qital and jihad then? And then we talked about the times of the Prophet and the Sahaba. And if that was the case, if everything could be solved by debate, discussion, and dialogue, then why would Khalid bin Walid go to Levant, and why would this Tariq bin Ziyad go to Andalusia then? And there is, although there is specific mention to this compassion and mercy when it comes to the wars, but we still have the concept of the wars. And if everything could be solved by the debate, and why do we have this, and why do we have books of jihad in Bukhari and even in many books? I mean, and then there is I would say about what Orusa said when it comes to for example in Kashmir, or for example in Palestine, where you cannot make friends. Why? Because friends are made between people when they consider you equals, I guess. And when you are not considered equal, how can you make friends? That's basically what I wanted to say.
Okay, I was wishing this question would have come earlier. Where were you, brother? You have come in the end. I so wished, this question came earlier. So first I'll take what Meenakshi had said. What did she say? Actually, I've forgotten what Meenakshi, what was the last point? What did you say, Meenakshi? Can you just remind me? I've taken notes for Ubair, but can you just remind me? Okay, about hell and paradise. Sorry. I've got it. I remember. So, this is the topic you have asked. It's a topic which I take in more than an hour. But to show, just give an example of a few things. I'll just narrate 2 or 3 hadiths. And this is not conclusive, what I'm going to quote, but I'm going to show you a picture. This is not, don't draw conclusions from this with the picture I'm showing you, because it's a big topic. But, you have heard this. I'll show you another aspect, completely opposite. A hadith in Bukhari, I'm mentioning these books for the Muslim audience because they know what these books are. There was a woman who indulged in adultery, and once she was going and she saw a dog who was, dying of thirst. She took a lot of trouble, took out some water. She empathized with the dog that I can't look at him dying. With a lot of trouble, she took out water and she gave the dying dog water. And the hadith says Allah was so happy with that deed of hers that he forgave everything and said, somebody who gets forgiveness from Allah, that's it. There are many other hadiths, for example, there is this hadith about a man who prayed for 60 years. He was a perfect worshipper for 60 years. He entered old age. And in Islam, a hadith in Bukhari says that somebody who does adultery in old age, Allah will not even look at him on the day of judgment. So, after 60 years of perfect worship, he, for 6 nights, he did, adultery. Now, a point came that, he was hungry for 3 days. I'm cutting short, the hadith is very long. And, people around him were also hungry, and somebody gave him a loaf of bread. So, he himself is hungry from 3 days. He breaks the bread into 2 and gives half piece to the one on the right and half piece to the one on the left. And Allah would order the angel of death, take his life right now. And on the day of judgment, his 60 years of worship would be put on a mizan. Mizan is like a scale, like, how we weigh vegetables. We put something on one side. And so, his good deeds would be put on one side and the mizan would be like this. And then his 6 nights of adultery would be put on the other side and the mizan would be like this. And then 1 loaf of bread would be put on the other side and the mizan again would be like this. So, Allah, the very first chapter of Islam, I did not get to talk much about it, is Surah Fatiha. It reminds Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, that who's the master of Day of Judgment? Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim is the master of Day of Judgment. If there is a poet king on the throne, somebody who does poetry, who will be his courtiers? Who will be in his court? People who do poetry, right? If there is a, somebody who's a physics, genius on the throne, who will be in his court? Scholars and physics people, professors and such people. But who's on the throne? The very first chapter of the Quran says, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim Maliki Yawmiddin. So the God of love, care and mercy is going to judge us. And he's going to first, pick up these acts of mercy And a hadith says, on the mizan, the heaviest thing on the mizan will be, good manners, akhlaq. So, the adulteress showed good manners to a dog, and God said, come. That man, he himself was hungry for 3 days. It is not compulsory to give water to a dying dog. It's not farz. If somebody knows these classifications, it's not farz to, that you are hungry for 3 days, you give the bread to someone else. But, he gave. And in the Islamic concept, Allah recognized it and, rewarded them. So this is the other side. You saw one side, this is the other. So, it's a very long concept and we can't go it in such a short time. And the other question which Brother Ubair has asked, again, that's a very long question. I wish you had asked it, at least an hour ago. But, I'll just make quick comments. I discussed about, lakum dinakum waliyadin. I did not, towards the end, take time discussing the concept of war. And I said, maybe some question will come. So I showed you a map of Abyssinia. Abyssinia is Ethiopia or Habsh. If you know even a little bit about Sirah, the first hijrah, the first migration did not happen to Medina. It happened to Abyssinia. And Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam praised that Christian kingdom and said, the king is good and you go there and you will not be wronged over there. And that Christian king, what was he following? Effectively, he did not say it like this. He said, okay, you Muslims can follow what you want to follow. There's a little difference between our religions, but you can follow what you want to follow. He was giving that room to the Muslims. This is the room Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam asked in Makkah when he said, there is no compulsion. You don't need to, we are not forcing you. Lakum dina, okay, to you, your recompense, to me, my recompense. To you, your religion, to me, my religion. Okay, we are not forcing you. But they did not accept all these things. They did not accept all these things. And it was in these criterias, that Persians and the Romans, for example, they did not allow that. Roman is a Christian king. The Roman Empire was a Christian empire and Abyssinia was a Christian empire. Never did a Muslim army enter, in the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam or the first 4 Khalifas, they never entered, which was right next door to them. But they, fought the Romans. Ubair also mentioned Hazrat Khalid bin Walid Radhiyallahu Ta'ala anhu. If you read his letter, to Hormuz, if you read about the Battle of Hormuz with the Persians, he wrote a letter and that letter is preserved. You should read it in the context of what I'm telling you about, what happened to Abyssinia, why nobody went to Abyssinia, because they were giving freedom of religion. He said, he laid 3 conditions to the Persian general Hormuz. First he said that you accept Islam. We are brothers. We are brothers. Then no fighting. Second, that, you don't stop us from practicing our religion. You don't stop us from practicing our religion. That's the second condition Hazrat Khalid bin Walid Radhiyallahu Ta'ala anhu gives. You don't stop us from practicing our religion. And third, if you choose third, then know that the people who stand behind me, they love death like you love life. And Hormuz, he rejected the first 2 conditions. Okay, what was the second condition? Okay, you don't accept, but let us practice. That was what the Sahabis were asking. And these kingdoms, these, empires, they were not, allowing these things. These aspects are at times not reported, not told. Why Hazrat Khalid bin Walid? Of course, he knows the criteria of war. He's saying that the sword of Allah will not fall on somebody who lets me practice my faith. I will not fight against him. So, of course, it's a big discussion, jihad and qital and all. But about jihad, chapter 25, verse 52. Again, it's a big topic and you can, come back with a lot of things. But, again, I'm just commenting on some words you said. Chapter 25, verse 52, you can note this and read it also. It's the only verse in the Quran where the word jihad comes twice in a single verse. And jihad and kabira, the bigger jihad is talked about. So it says, oh believers, do jihad as you must do the bigger jihad with the Quran. So the bigger jihad is with the Quran, it's with the knowledge, it's with the message that our God is Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Kul Huwallahu Ahad, that Ar-Rahmanir Rahim is one. Lam yalid walam yulad, that Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, he's not born, he did not give birth. Walam yakullahu kufuwan ahad, there is no one like Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. This is the, the Islamic message, that do jihad, the greater jihad with the message. So there are many hadiths in this regard, about the ink of the scholar, mightier than, more holier than the blood of martyr. There are many things supporting this verse, chapter 25, verse 52. So, I'm not denying that Qital did not happen, and I tried to explain also that what did Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam stood for? What was he standing for? He was standing for the concept that Allah is Ar-Rahman, and the Makkans were rejecting this claim. Quran is witness to it, and I also gave a reference from Sirah, and there are other places in the Sulh Hudaybiyah. If you just read about Sulh Hudaybiyah, they said Ar-Rahman we don't accept. So Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam stood up for defending this idea that God is Ar-Rahman, Allah is Ar-Rahman. So they were fighting to defend this idea, and they were persecuting, to not let people have this idea that we'll only be dedicated to this one God and no one else. Our life will be colored by this color. So also you made a point that you can only be friends with somebody who treats you as humans. The Sahabas and the Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the Makkans, they did not used to treat them as human beings. They used to treat them lesser than animals. They would tie the Sahabis with camels and rip their bodies apart. I'm sure you have heard such things. Imagine tying somebody with camels and ripping their body apart. The kind of torture there was, it's uncomparable. So they were not treating them as human beings. Yet how did in 17 years Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam turn those very inhumane people who did not treat Muslims as human beings, how did he turn them into friends? Is this not a question that we should ask? That how did Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam succeed? How did he turn enemy into friend? You are giving examples of people of our times. Yes, cruel is cruel. I'm not denying that. Somebody is doing oppression. I'm not denying it. Somebody is being cruel. I'm not denying it. But I'm saying, such things and even more worse things were happening at the time of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. How did he turn those same very people, into his close companions? How? Is this not a question we should ask? That why, he could do this, completely in 17 years, and we, are not being able to achieve it. Why? Why don't we remember, Shah Hamdan? Why don't we remember such saints, and what they did? I'm not denying anything, about jihad or qital or anything, but, I find people deny these aspects. The aspects I'm pointing out are the aspects people deny. I'm not denying the qital aspect. I'm understanding it. I am explaining it. So I hope, this is clear. And of course, we can go on this topic for hours. So,
all right.
Over to you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much, Basit Bhai, for this very, very wonderful presentation and also a lively discussion.